I came home from celebrating my PhD graduation with friends to find my diploma burning in the fireplace. The heavy cream paper with gold embossing was curling at the edges, my name, Dr. Samantha Reese, disappearing into ash and smoke. "What are you doing?" I screamed, lunging toward the fireplace. My mother stepped between me and the flames, her face set in that familiar expression of righteous determination. "Smart women make terrible wives," she said calmly. "No man wants a know-it-all." I stared at her, then at my father, who was nodding approvingly from his recliner. "Your sister's engagement is more important than your education, Samantha. We need to focus on what really matters." The flames consumed the last corner of my doctorate in biochemistry, 6 years of research, countless sleepless nights, the culmination of everything I'd worked toward since I was 18 years old. Gone. "That was my PhD diploma," I whispered. "That was a piece of paper that was going to ruin your chances of happiness," Mom replied, dusting ash off her hands. "Men are intimidated by women who think they're smarter than everyone else. I don't think I'm smarter than everyone. I earned a doctorate in biochemistry." "Same thing," Dad grunted, not looking up from his newspaper. "Your sister found herself a good man who can provide for her. She didn't need to spend 8 years in school to do it." My sister Melissa appeared in the doorway, wearing the engagement ring she'd been flashing around for 3 weeks. "Sam, you're being dramatic. It's just a diploma. You still have your degree." "The diploma is proof of my degree. You can get a replacement," Mom said dismissively. "Though I'd rather you didn't. Brad was asking about you at dinner last night." Brad, my mother's friend's son who dropped out of community college and worked at his father's used car lot. Brad, who'd asked me out 5 times and couldn't understand why I kept saying no. "I'm not interested in Brad." "You should be. He's got a good job, comes from a nice family, and he's looking for a wife. But he specifically said he doesn't want some college girl who thinks she's too good for him." I looked around the living room, at the family photos covering every surface, most of them featuring Melissa in various stages of traditional feminine achievement. Prom queen, beauty pageant winner, sorority president, and now engaged to a man she'd met at church who sold insurance and wanted a stay-at-home wife. There were no photos of my academic achievements, no pictures from my graduation ceremony, my research presentations, my published papers. Nothing that acknowledged I existed as anything other than Melissa's disappointing older sister. "I spent 6 years earning my PhD," I said quietly. "And what has it gotten you?" Mom demanded. "You're 30 years old, unmarried, with no prospects. Meanwhile, Melissa is 26 and planning her wedding. My PhD got me a job offer at the National Institutes of Health. I'm going to be researching cancer treatments." "Cancer research doesn't cuddle you at night," Dad said, folding his newspaper with finality. "It doesn't give you children or a home to take care of. Maybe I don't want children right now. Maybe I want to help save lives." "Save lives?" Mom laughed, actually laughed. "Samantha, you're not saving anyone. You're hiding in a laboratory because you're too proud to admit that what every woman really wants is a family." I stared at the fireplace where the last traces of my diploma were turning to ash. 8 years of undergraduate and graduate work, reduced to smoke because my parents believed my education was an obstacle to marriage. "I'm moving out," I said. "Don't be ridiculous," Mom snapped. "You can't afford your own place on a student stipend." "I'm not a student anymore. I'm Dr. Samantha Reese, and I have a job offer that pays $95,000 a year." The room went quiet. "That's not possible," Dad said slowly. "It's very possible. I accepted the position this afternoon. I start in 2 weeks. Mom's face went through several expressions before settling on suspicious anger. "You're lying." I pulled out my phone and showed them the email from Dr. Patricia Martinez at the NIH. The subject line read, "Welcome to the Cancer Research Division. Employment offer acceptance confirmed." Dad leaned forward to read it, his expression shifting from skepticism to confusion to something that might have been respect. $95,000, he repeated. Starting salary. With performance bonuses and research grants, it could be significantly higher. Mom snatched the phone from my hands, reading the email herself. This doesn't change anything. Money isn't everything, Samantha. What about your biological clock? What about giving us grandchildren? What about letting me live my own life? "We are your family," Melissa said from the doorway. "We want what's best for you." "No," I replied, looking at each of them. You want what makes you comfortable. You want me to fit into the same box that worked for you, regardless of what I want or what I'm capable of. I walked upstairs to my childhood bedroom and started packing. Everything I'd brought home for the graduation celebration, plus anything else I couldn't bear to leave behind. My research journals, my laptop, my certificates and awards from undergraduate school. As I packed, I could hear them arguing downstairs. $95,000, Margaret, Dad was saying. That's more than I make. Money isn't everything, Robert. What happens when she's 40 and alone? When all her friends have families and she's got nothing but test tubes and microscopes. Maybe she'll be happy with test tubes and microscopes, Dad said quietly, and I realized it was the first time he'd ever defended my choices. Happy? Robert, she's a woman. Women aren't happy without families. That's when I heard Melissa speak up. Mom, maybe Sam knows what she wants better than we do. Melissa, not you too. I'm just saying, $95,000 is a lot of money. And if she's helping cure cancer. She's not curing cancer, Mom snapped. She's wasting her life on some fantasy because she's too stubborn to admit that her education was a mistake. I finished packing and carried my suitcases downstairs. My family was still arguing in the living room, my burned diploma now just ash in the fireplace. I'll be in touch, I said, heading for the door. Samantha, wait, Dad called out. Maybe we were too hasty about the diploma. You burned my PhD diploma because you thought it would hurt my marriage prospects. There's no too hasty about that. That was deliberate destruction of something I earned through years of hard work. We can help you get a replacement, Mom offered, though her tone suggested she thought I was being unreasonable. You can't replace what this meant to me. But that's okay. I'll get a new one, and I'll hang it in my office at the National Institutes of Health. I left them standing in the living room and drove straight to my graduate advisor's house. Dr. Jennifer Walsh answered the door in her pajamas, took one look at my face, and invited me in without questions. They burned my diploma, I said, accepting the cup of tea she offered. They what? I told her everything. The fireplace, the comments about smart women and terrible wives, the pressure to date Brad from the car lot. Dr. Walsh listened without interrupting, her expression growing more incredulous with each detail. Samantha, she said finally, what they did was abusive. Destroying your diploma was a deliberate attempt to undermine your achievements and self-worth. They think they were helping me find a husband. They were sabotaging your success because it threatens their worldview. But here's what they don't understand. Your education isn't just a piece of paper. It's knowledge, skills, and experience that no one can take away from you. She was right. They could burn my diploma, but they couldn't burn my PT. They couldn't take away my research, my publications, my job offer, or my future. What do I do now? I asked. You live your life. You take that job at NIH. You do groundbreaking research, and you show them that smart women don't make terrible wives. They make successful, fulfilled human beings who choose their own paths. 2 weeks later, I started my job at the National Institutes of Health. My new office overlooked the Bethesda campus, and I hung my replacement diploma prominently on the wall where everyone could see it. Dr. Martinez, my new supervisor, welcomed me to the team and introduced me to my research group. Dr. Reese comes to us from Johns Hopkins with exceptional recommendations, she told the team. Her dissertation on protein synthesis inhibitors shows tremendous promise for cancer treatment applications. As I settled into my new life, I realized something important. My parents had been right about one thing. My education did change my marriage prospects, but not in the way they thought. 3 months into my new job, I met Dr. Marcus Chen, a fellow researcher who specialized in immunotherapy. He was brilliant, kind, and genuinely excited about my work on protein synthesis. Your research could revolutionize how we approach metastatic cancers, he said during our first coffee date. Have you considered combining your protein inhibitors with immunotherapy protocols? I had considered it, and we spent hours discussing the possibilities. It was the first time I'd met a man who found my intelligence attractive rather than threatening. 6 months later, Marcus and I published a joint paper that made the front page of the Journal of Cancer Research. The headline read, Revolutionary Combination Therapy Shows 85% Success Rate in Stage 4 Cancer Trials. That same week, I got a call from Melissa. Sam, I saw the article about your research online. Mom and Dad saw it too. And? Dad framed it. He hung it in his office at work and tells everyone his daughter is curing cancer. What about Mom? Melissa was quiet for a moment. She's struggling with it. She keeps saying she was trying to protect you, but people keep congratulating her on having such a successful daughter. Maybe she's realizing that success looks different for different people. Maybe. She asked me to ask you, would you come to Sunday dinner this week? She wants to apologize. I thought about it. Only if she's genuinely sorry. Not sorry I'm upset, but sorry for what she did. I think she is, really. Sunday dinner was awkward at first. Mom had clearly been crying, and Dad kept clearing his throat like he wanted to say something but didn't know how. Finally, Mom spoke up. Samantha, I owe you an apology. What I did to your diploma was wrong. What I said about your education was wrong. Thank you for saying that. I was so focused on what I thought would make you happy that I couldn't see you were already becoming happy in your own way. Dad nodded. That article in the newspaper, seeing your name as the lead researcher on something so important. I realized I was wrong about your education. We're proud of you, Mom added quietly. I should have said that years ago. It wasn't a complete transformation overnight, but it was a start. 2 years later, Marcus proposed to me in our shared laboratory, right next to the equipment we used to develop our breakthrough cancer treatment. He got down on one knee surrounded by microscopes and research data, and it was perfect. Dr. Samantha Reese, he said, will you marry me and continue revolutionizing cancer treatment together? I said yes, and we had our engagement party at the NIH, surrounded by colleagues who celebrated both our personal happiness and our professional achievements. My parents came to the party, and I watched Dad explain to anyone who would listen that his daughter was developing treatments that would save thousands of lives. Smart women don't make terrible wives, he told Dr. Martinez proudly. They make extraordinary wives who change the world. Mom stood next to him, nodding and smiling, finally understanding that my success didn't diminish my worth as a woman, it enhanced it. At our wedding 6 months later, Marcus and I exchanged vows we'd written ourselves, promising to support each other's dreams and celebrate each other's achievements. During the reception, Mom gave a speech that brought tears to everyone's eyes. I once believed that education and marriage were incompatible for women, she said. I was wrong. My daughter taught me that the smartest thing a woman can do is pursue her dreams fearlessly, and the smartest thing a man can do is love a woman who dreams big. She looked at me with genuine pride. Dr. Samantha Reese Chen is living proof that smart women don't make terrible wives. They make brilliant wives who make the world a better place. 3 years later, our combination therapy protocol was approved by the FDA and has saved over 10,000 lives. Marcus and I have 2 research labs, 16 published papers, and a beautiful daughter named Elena who loves to help us in our home office. The diploma my mother burned is still gone, but it doesn't matter anymore. I have something better, a life built on my own terms, surrounded by people who celebrate my intelligence rather than fear it. And every time I look at Elena playing with her toy microscope, I know she'll grow up understanding that smart women don't make terrible wives. They make unstoppable ones.
The email hit at 9:12 p.m. Your seat won't be needed, plus a smiley I could feel from the next room. You can still be great moral support on the live stream. I read it 3 times, the way you read a diagnosis, slowly, like the words might behave differently if I was careful. I'm Tori Hopkins. I'm 31, the older sister. I live alone in a 1-bedroom above a nail salon on Maple Avenue in Maple Ridge, Ohio. I stock shelves on the night rotation at Buckeye Grocery, Yula 14, off Route 6. My sister, Caitlin, is 28 and getting married on Saturday. Our mum, Lillian, is 58 and our dad, Alfred, is 60. Caitlin's groom is Troy Edwards, 29, polite in the way that never stops anything. Her maid of honour, Jolie, is 28 and likes to say, "Don't worry, it's handled," and then hand the worry to someone else. Delaney, our cousin, is 27 and texts like a sportscaster when family stuff goes sideways. I had my laptop on my thrifted coffee table, a ring from an old mug etched in the corner. The apartment smelled like dryer sheets and the ramen I ate out of the pot. I watched the 3 dots appear, vanish, reappear. She didn't add anything else. 2 days before the wedding, and I was being asked to stay home and clap at a screen. I clicked to my notes. I'd already put a $250 DJ deposit on my Visa for DJ Xavier Chapman because the vendor only took a card, and it'll be easier if you do it, Tor. I'd paid $120 for folding chair rentals for the ceremony because the venue charged extra and I had the login. I covered an $85 rush fee on dress alterations when Caitlin's timeline slid, and I'd Venmo'd $60 to the VFW hall manager for the cake stand because the woman didn't take cards and I had cash that day. 4 line items that looked like help when I tapped pay. Now, with your seat won't be needed sitting in my inbox, those payments looked like I'd booked myself into a job I didn't apply for. I screenshot the email. I saved it as boundary.png on my desktop between a tax folder and a grocery flyer layout I was messing with for fun. I opened my bank app and stared at the pending line items and the pay period deposits scheduled for Friday at midnight. Numbers I understood. People, less so. Mum would say this was a misunderstanding. Caitlin would say it wasn't personal, just guest count pressure, and we had to be strict on numbers. Jolie would say, don't make it about you, and then call me when the rental company asked for a second contact. I wrote out the math on the back of an envelope anyway. 250 plus 120 plus 85 plus 60 bar 515. I underlined it. If I wasn't welcome in the room, my card wasn't either. The window unit hummed to life. Outside, someone on the sidewalk laughed and it bounced up to me through the thin glass. I could picture the venue, downtown at the community centre with the big windows that always look colder than they feel. I could picture Caitlin's face, all highlighter and nerves, the way she'd looked at fittings when a seam didn't behave, like it had personally insulted her schedule. I leaned back on the saggy couch and thought through the logistics because that's what I'm good at. The wedding was Saturday, tomorrow was Friday. I worked 6 a.m. to 2 p.m, plus the store's weekly truck ran late on Fridays. Lunch is at 11:30 if nothing spills. The VFW office is open 9 to 1. DJ Xavier answers texts faster than emails. The chair company lives on hold music, but they refund if you cancel 24 hours ahead. The tailor would grumble and issue store credit. None of that was dramatic. It was just making calls. I didn't reply to Caitlin, not yet. My fingers hovered over the keys anyway, trying to find a sentence that didn't apologise to people who had just erased my seat. I'm confused, I typed, then deleted it. I didn't need clarity. I had a sentence in black and white. I looked at the family group chat pinned on my phone. Mum's last photo of sample centerpieces lined up on our parents' dining table. Dad's thumbs up, Jolie's all set with no details, Caitlin's screenshot of her hair trial. 8 months of planning had trained all of us to glance at our phones when a ping meant someone wanted something. It's how I ended up booking DJs on my off hours and paying deposits during my 30-minute break behind a stack of paper towel pallets. I closed my laptop before I could start fixing anything. The hinge made a soft click that felt like an answer. For context, this isn't the first time I've been the family fire extinguisher. When Dad locked his keys in the truck last winter, I was the one who called the tow and paid the $95 because he didn't have his wallet. When Mum's blood pressure meds got hung up in the mail, I drove to the pharmacy and covered the $46 bridge supply. I don't mind helping, but that's not the same as being told to watch your sister get married on your phone like you're a stranger. I folded the envelope with the math and tucked it under my keys so I'd grab it in the morning. I set my alarm for 4:45. I sat there long enough to hear the ice maker drop a clatter in the freezer. Then I stood up and cleaned the pot I'd eaten from, because I wanted one normal thing done right. If I'm not invited as a sister, I'm done showing up as a wallet. I woke up before the alarm, the kind of snap awake that means your brain already decided for you. It was Friday. The email was still there. I made coffee, grabbed the envelope with the math on it, and went down the stairs that always creak on the third step. My week had me on the early truck, so I clocked in at Buckeye Grocery No. 14 at 5:58 a.m. and pulled the first pallet of paper towels into aisle 8. The store was quiet except for the radio and the beeper on the back door. I stacked, faced labels and let my head line up the day. At 11:28, I clocked out for lunch and took the back stairs 2 steps at a time. The cake stand was still riding around in my trunk in a VFW labelled box wrapped in one of my beach towels. I'd picked it up Tuesday because it's safer with you, according to Mum, and I believed her then. Maple Ridge is small, so the VFW hall was 5 minutes down Main. Inside, the office smelled like floor cleaner and paper. A woman with a grey bun and a sweatshirt that said auxiliary looked up. "Return?" "Change of plans," I said, setting the box on the counter. She slid a carbon copy form toward me. "Write your name and the rental number." I wrote Tori Hopkins and the number from the yellow sticky on the box. She checked the stand, nodded, and stamped the form. The thump felt like something in me settling. "You paid $60 via Venmo," she said, peering at a spiral notebook. "You want it back the same way?" "Please." She pulled out her phone, tapped, and my phone buzzed a second later. Venmo. "VFW Maple Ridge paid you $60. I took a screenshot and tucked the stamped form into my bag. "Thanks," I said. "Congratulations," she said automatically, then, catching herself. "Or good luck, whichever applies." "Good luck," I said, and I meant it. In the car, I inhaled a squash turkey sandwich while scrolling to DJ Xavier's contact. He picked up on the second ring. "Xavier?" "Hey, it's Tori Hopkins. For Saturday, I need to cancel the booking." He was quiet a beat. "Ah, that wedding. Okay, I can release the slot." "I'll push the deposit back to your card. You'll get an email confirmation." "Thanks for understanding." "It happens," he said, like he'd seen enough weddings to stop being surprised. Next was the chair company. Their hold music was something peppy about sunlight that made my eyelid twitch. I watched the clock on my dash eat minutes while a recorded voice thanked me for my patience. At 11:56, a person came on. I gave the order number. "Event date tomorrow," she said. "You're within the 24-hour full refund window. We'll reverse the charge to the card on file." "Great, please remove my number as the contact," I added. "Noted," she said, and I believed her because she typed loudly. I forwarded the tailor the email thread with the rush fee request and wrote 2 sentences. Dress no longer needed. "Can the rush fee be credited?" I hit send and wiped mustard off my steering wheel with a napkin. Back at the store, I clocked in with 3 minutes to spare and went back to cutting shrink wrap. My phone buzzed in my apron pocket. "Taylor, we can issue store credit for $85. I replied, "Thank you, because I do use thread and needles, and store credit is still not money anymore coming out of me." By 2, the truck was half done and my back felt like a low battery icon. I signed out and detoured to the library before heading home. The print release station smelled like warm toner and carpet. I pulled up my email on a public terminal, slid in $1 and printed Caitlin's email on one side of a piece of cardstock. On the other side, I typed and printed, clean, DJ deposit, Xavier Chapman, $250 refunded chair rentals, Maple events, 120-ton refunded dress rush fee, stitch and hem, $85 store credit, VFW cake stand, $60 returned, total $515. I trimmed the edges with the green guillotine cutter the way you do when you want the lines straight even if nothing else is. I tucked the card into my purse next to the stamped VFW form. On the drive back to Maple Avenue, my ringtone started its bright little chirp. Mom flashed across the screen where I'd propped the phone on the dash. I pulled into the next lot and let it ring in the cup holder. It rang out. Voicemail. Then immediately again. Same name, Same ringtone, same tight feeling in my shoulders. I watched it buzz until it stopped. I didn't owe anyone a speech in a parking lot. Upstairs, I put the towel I'd used on the cake stand in the laundry basket and set my purse on the counter, the card peeking up like a caption. The apartment was quiet. I made pasta, ate it standing up, and checked my bank app. Xavier's confirmation email sat there with a refund notice. The chair company's reversal was pending. The VFW money had already landed. The $85 credit from the tailor pinged my inbox with a balance code. My screen lit up again with Mom. I turned it over and let it go dark. The group chat started pinging like a microwave with a stuck button around 9 on Friday. Final head count. Did we ever confirm the chairs? Who's bringing the cake stand? Mum sent roll call. Then Caitlin, Tori. Jolie dropped all set without any nouns attached. I opened the thread, typed, "Chair company has your contact on file," and deleted it before the bubble could show. I flipped my phone face down on the counter and packed my lunch for the morning. Peanut butter sandwich in a baggie, an apple, the last of a bag of pretzels clipped with a binder clip. I checked my purse. The card with Caitlin's email on one side and the refunds itemised on the other sat in there like a flat little spine. I slid it in deeper and zipped the pocket. Alarm set for 4:45. Coffee maker loaded. I washed the one plate in the sink because I wanted to wake up to a small, clean thing. The phone buzzed against the laminate. "Mom, call me?" Then, "It's late, but this is important." Dad chimed in with a thumbs up to Mum's message, like he was seconding a motion. I sent nothing. The chat continued without me, a small storm I could hear through the door but didn't have to stand in. By 10 the typing slowed. I turned on the fan and went to bed. At 5:02 a.m. I was up anyway. The apartment smelled like coffee and the nail salon's faint acetone from downstairs, the morning mix that always makes me think of fresh starts that are just regular starts. I put on my Buckeye grocery polo, slipped my phone into my back pocket, and took the stairs, counting the third one out of habit. It was still dusky when I pulled into the lot off Route 6. The automatic doors sighed open. I clocked in at 5:58 and wheeled a pallet jack into aisle 8. The lemon cleaner from the night crew clung to the shelves. I scanned UPCs and stacked paper towels by the case, corners tight, edges together. When you do it right, the aisle looks like a picture, and I like that proof. At 6:11, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I finished the case I was holding before I looked. From Caitlin. "You're still covering the DJ, right?" The heart sat there, pink and tidy, like sprinkles on a demand. I let the screen sit open long enough for the read timestamp to stamp itself, then clicked the side button and slid the phone back into my pocket. I added another row to the display. The store radio played some soft hit about forever. By 6:30, Jolie slid into my Instagram DMs like we were middle schoolers passing notes. "Don't be petty, it's her day." No greeting, no question mark. I stared at the message while the app showed me my own face reflected in the black frame around it. I closed it. The little scene tag did its job. At 7:05, Mum texted, "I told Aunt Marcy you're coming. Please don't make this difficult." Then, "We need the cake stand and chair confirmation. I don't understand why you're not answering." I turned my phone to vibrate and propped it in the back of the paper products section behind a stack of bargain napkins while I worked the top shelves. The vibration rattled the plastic, a small bug under a cup. Next pallet was cat litter. I hauled 20-pound bags into a pyramid and thought about the difference between hard and heavy. Heavy you can move if you bend your knees and use your legs. Hard is the space you make between a buzzing phone and your hands. Both are work. On my 10-minute, I sat on the back step by the loading dock and watched my breath fog a little in the shade. Delaney texted separately, not in the group. "You okay?" Then a second, no pressure to reply. "Just sending a hey." I sent a single thumbs up and added, "Working." It was the truth and enough. By 8, the group chat had developed a rhythm. Jolie asking vague questions like, who has the backup? Mom tagging me, Dad dropping thumbs and we'll figure it out. Caitlin swinging between, I'm freaking out and it's fine. No one mentioned the email. No one asked me a yes or no I hadn't already answered with refunds. I stacked end caps and kept my answers in my pocket. Around 9, Troy texted me for the first time in months. Morning, Tori. Quick question on DJ timing. What time is set up? Polite, efficient, like a calendar invite. I watched the dots rise and fall under his name, as if he was giving me a minute to save him. I put the phone down without typing. The read receipt slid under his message anyway, a quiet shelf tag, price displayed, no haggling. A co-worker, Luis from Dairy, stuck his head around the aisle. You good for the cooler reset later? Yeah, I said, after I finish bleach. Cool. He didn't ask about my phone. Work has a way of being the place you're exactly what you're there for. By 10, I'd packed my lunch back into the break room fridge and scrubbed my hands under the too hot tap. My phone lit again with Jolie. Wow! Then, if this ruins her entrance, that's on you. I didn't have anything to say to that would change her mind, and I didn't owe her the attempt. I clocked my screen time up by more than I liked and tucked the phone deep in my apron. The store felt steady. The shelves made sense. My thumbs stayed still. I let the read receipts tell the story. Saturday moved the way Saturdays do at the store. Steady, humming, a mix of regulars and people stocking up for the weekend. I kept my head on price tags and pallets until my first 10-minute break hit at 11:55. I clocked out, grabbed my phone from my apron and slipped into the little break nook by the loading dock where the soda machine hums louder than it needs to. The live stream link sat in the family chat from Mom at 11:32. Here it is, with 3 champagne emojis. I tapped it. A browser window opened to a YouTube Live with K&T ceremony typed in a serif font and a viewer count in the corner that ticked between 27 and 34. The camera was propped a little too high, pointed at a room I recognised, the downtown community centre with the tall windows that make everything look colder. There were no chairs. Guests lined the walls like a fire drill, some holding their purses like shields, older folks perched on a stretch of windowsill like birds on a wire. I saw Aunt Marcy's floral dress and Uncle Ron's white socks with dress shoes, 2 teenagers scrolling near the exit. The aisle runner bowed in the middle like it had given up halfway across the floor. The chat on the right blinked. So pretty, followed by, no sound? Then, I can hear the vents low-L. Someone on site shifted the phone slightly and the frame lurched. I caught a slice of ceiling tile before the camera found the aisle again. The officiant, someone I didn't recognise in a navy suit, cleared his throat. People looked around like they were waiting for the cue. A song started. Strings, tinny through a Bluetooth speaker turned up to its limit, and cut out after 3 measures. A few heads turned toward the back. I saw the maid of honour, Jolie, in blush satin, hunched over her phone near the doorway, tapping and squinting. The music sputtered back, skipped, then paused again. Someone whispered, "Is it on Bluetooth?" Loud enough that the mic picked it up as a paper-soft hiss. The doors opened. Caitlin stood there with her bouquet and that careful smile she'd practiced at fittings. Her dress looked good, clean lines, the hem doing what it was supposed to. Mum was behind her, more teary than I've seen her in a while, hand on Caitlin's elbow like she could steer the day with it. The music found itself for a stretch, something pop translated into piano, and then a ringtone blasted through the room, the classic marimba that made half the guests reach for their pockets out of muscle memory. The audio dropped to half volume while the phone's screen lit in Jolie's hand. She fumbled, whispering, "Sorry, sorry," into the speaker. Someone hissed, "Airplane mode," and someone else, "Do not disturb," and the song restarted like a tired runner, back to the beginning, a little out of breath. Caitlin took 2 steps and paused. That smile thinned into a line I knew from every time a seam didn't cooperate. Behind her, Mum mouthed something and did a small forward motion with her fingers. I watched Caitlin glance to the side, to where Troy stood at the front, tie slightly crooked, a fixed grin on his face like a man trying to look at a map and a camera at the same time. The song died again, mid-phrase. Another ringtone, different this time. Jolie stabbed at her screen and started a different track entirely, this one with a beat that did not match a walk down an aisle. I heard a couple of stifled laughs that wanted to be coughs. Someone near the camera said, "Just keep walking," a sibilant line that cut through everything. Caitlin did. No music, just the sound of her shoes on the runner and the hum of the building's vents. My break timer on the time clock app ticked down in the corner of my screen. 6:12 left. I held the phone steady anyway. A baby fussed somewhere out of frame. The officiant shuffled his papers. The chat filled. "Turn it up." "We can't hear. You're doing great." With hearts. I could see the tiny tremor in Caitlin's bouquet stems, the way she gripped them tighter than the florist meant her to. At the front she took Troy's hands. The Bluetooth reconnected for a second, and a cheerful ad for auto insurance blasted one line before someone yanked the volume down. Jolie turned her back to the camera, head bent, hairpins catching the light while she dug through a small purse, then held the phone up like a tray to a groomsman who shrugged. He mouthed, "I don't know." I realised I was holding my breath and let it out. It fogged the lower corner of my screen before clearing. The video hiccuped, pixelated, then caught up. The officiant started speaking with no amplification, voice thin but determined. "Friends and family, we're gathered." The stream froze on Caitlin's face mid-turn. Eyes wide, jaw tight, flowers slightly off-centre. The spinning wheel appeared. I watched it make 2 full circles. The dock door banged open behind me, and Luis stuck his head out, saw me on my phone, and nodded like he hadn't seen anything. The wheel spun a 3rd time, and my brake ticked under 3 minutes. I held the power button until the screen went black. It wasn't a protest so much as a mercy. On me, on the 10 minutes, on the small insistence that I didn't have to stand here and watch what I already knew. Inside, the store smelled like lemon cleaner and cold produce. I slid my phone back into my apron and washed my hands at the utility sink, the water running hot enough to sting. Back in aisle 8, I straightened the paper towels again, square by square, until the picture made sense. By the time I clocked out on Saturday, my phone looked like a slot machine someone kept yanking. Missed call, Mom. Missed call, Dad. Missed call, Caitlin. A voicemail from Dad. A text stack from Jolie, one of them in all caps. I slid the phone into my apron, signed the log for the pallet jack, and told Luis I'd see him Monday. The sky over Route 6 was a pale blue that doesn't commit. I drove home with the radio off. The salon downstairs had their door propped, the smell of acetone and citrus drifting up the stairwell. Inside, I set my keys on the envelope with the math and put my phone face up on the counter like I wasn't dodging it. I started a pot of rice. While the water heated, I scrolled. "Mom, call me." Then, "This is not okay." Then a paragraph about everyone asking where you were and "you should have been there regardless," Dad's name under a voicemail. Caitlin, "Why would you do that to me?" Then, "I can't believe you." Then nothing. A blank bubble of space where a typing dot might have been. Jolie had range. "You literally sabotaged this." Then, "Do you know how humiliating it was?" Then, "Grown-ups communicate, Tori." The last one had a period sharp enough to cut bread. I turned down the burner and pressed play on Dad's voicemail. "Hey kiddo," he started, like we were talking about the weather. "I think there's been a miscommunication here. Your mum's pretty upset. Caitlin's. Well, we're doing a brunch tomorrow at the diner at 11. Let's all sit down and talk it out. Call me when you get this." In the background I could hear clinking glasses, a scrape of a chair, someone saying, "Where's the extension cord?" He hung up without saying please or thank you, like I was already going to do it. Delaney popped up in the separate thread. "Wish they'd listened," she wrote. A second later, a photo, a line of women's heels against a bare wall, straps and satin and no chairs in front of them. The angle was low, like she kept her phone at thigh level. I could see Aunt Marcy's floral hem just at the edge. I sent back a heart. That was all that felt useful. The rice clicked to simmer. I took my purse down from the hook and set the contents out like they could be a shield. The stamped VFW form. The envelope with 250 plus 120 plus 85 plus 60 515 underlined. The library printed card with Caitlin's email on one side. "Your seat won't be needed. You can still be great moral support on the live stream." And the refunds on the other. I opened my email on my laptop and pulled up the confirmations. DJ Xavier. Cancellation confirmed. Refund processed. Chairs. Order cancelled. $120 refund to card ending 1413. Stitch and Hem. Store credit $85 issued. Venmo ding for the VFW. I lined them up in a row across the table. Numbers don't yell. They just sit there and be themselves. My phone buzzed again. "Jolie, everyone knows you pulled the chairs." Then, "Hope you're happy." I set the phone back down without my thumb unlocking anything. The screen dimmed itself like even it was tired. I ate standing up. Rice with soy sauce, a cucumber sliced on the cutting board. The apartment was quiet except for the fridge knocking itself awake and the traffic on Maple. I thought about the live stream freezing on Caitlin's face, and I let the thought pass without chasing it. When the sink was clean, I put the card back in my purse, behind the zipper where my fingers would find it without looking. I folded the VFW form and slid it in too. I kept the envelope with the math on the counter. It felt like a good weight to leave in the open. The group chat kept going like a storm on the other side of a door. "Mom, I told people you weren't feeling well. Please don't make me a liar." Then, a moment later, "Be there at 11. No question mark. No please that counted. Caitlin sent one more. "I expected better from you." I stared at the sentence and noticed the way it was built, all idea and no fact. I closed messages and clicked back to my bank app. Xavier's refund had settled. The chair company was pending. The Venmo was in. The Taylor credit showed as a note under my name. I took a shower and let the water go a little too hot. The steam loosened the smell of the store from my hair. When I came out, the sky had started to pink at the edges, and my phone had gone quiet in the way that means people switch to talking to each other about you. I set an alarm for 9:30 so I could get up, get coffee, and not be rushed. I put my purse by the door. I turned my phone face down and slid it to Do Not Disturb, then took it off, because if something truly bad happened, I didn't want to miss it. I compromised by turning the volume down. In bed, the fan made its steady hum. The bread aisle after a snow forecast is bare and calm in a way that always makes me laugh. People panic, then leave me a checklist of emptiness to face and fix. My body remembered that emptiness and took it as permission. I slept like that, peacefully empty, not because everything was fine, but because the part that was mine was done. In the grey morning when I checked, Mum's last text still sat at the bottom. Be there at 11. I decided to be on time and say very few words. The diner smelled like syrup and coffee that had been warming since dawn. I got there at 10:58 and took the booth by the window because it's the one where the sun warms your shoulder but doesn't blind you. I ordered a coffee so I'd have something to do with my hands. The mug came chipped on the rim, clean anyway. They came in at 11:05 in a clump. Mum led, coat already unbuttoned like she was coming in hot. Dad held the door and said, "Hey kiddo," like we were at the hardware store. Caitlin slid into the booth across from me in big sunglasses, her hair in yesterday's curls. Jolie sat next to her and started doctoring her coffee like it had wronged her. Troy hovered, then took the chair at the end. "Hi," I said. Mum didn't bother with hello. "I don't even know where to start," she said, grabbing a menu she didn't look at. Yesterday was, she flapped a hand, a mess. The waitress reappeared with waters. You folks need a minute? We're fine, Mum said, and then, because she's still polite in public, thank you, pancake special for me. Orders went in like muscle memory. Dad got eggs over easy. Jolie asked about almond milk and sighed when the answer was no. Troy asked for a skillet. Caitlin said, just toast, and kept her sunglasses on. Jolie leaned in. You could have told me, she said to me, voice pitched sweet with a bite underneath. Instead of whatever that was. She made a circle in the air like she could stir the day backward. I wrapped my hands around my mug. I got an email, I said. I honoured it. That was all I put on the table. Caitlin's mouth tightened. I didn't say don't come, she said. I said the seat wasn't needed. That's... She stopped, searching for a word she didn't have. Semantics, Jolie offered, like a party favour. Mum shook her head. Family comes through, she said, the phrase she uses like a recipe card. You knew the numbers were tight. You knew how stressed she was. Why punish her on her wedding day? Dad nodded, a rhythm without conviction. Could have given a heads up, he added softly. I gave 8 months of heads up, I said, still calm, with logins and deposits and rides and... So you admit you pulled the chairs, Jolie said, pouncing on a word like a cat on a laser pointer. The chairs didn't show up, I said. That's what you're mad about. Caitlin flinched. The sunglasses made it easier for her to be a mystery. People were standing, she said, as if I hadn't seen. Grandma sat on a windowsill. The music... Her face twisted, then smoothed. Do you know how that looked? How it looked, Mum echoed, and somehow it wasn't about Grandma anymore. Troy cleared his throat. It was... We managed, he said, hands flat on the table like he was calming water. We're married. That's the important part. He said it like you say, the roads were bad, but we got there. Jolie stirred creamer so fast the coffee threatened to slosh. It could have been avoided, she said. You knew about the DJ, you had the chair contact, you had the cake thing. The cake was fine, Mum said too quickly. We put it on the dessert table. I had to find a tablecloth that didn't clash. The waitress slid plates in, and we all paused for the choreography. Silverware clinked. Syrup caps squeaked. It felt obscene to pour maple over something after the word punish had been said. I asked you to watch the live stream, Caitlin said finally, because we were over numbers and I didn't want to be rude to any of Troy's relatives. I thought you, of all people, would understand logistics. I took a sip, just to give my mouth something to do. The coffee was burnt in a way I like. I did, I said. I understood. Mum set her fork down like a gavel. You owe her an apology, she said, for making a scene without even being there. I put my palms on the formica, flat. The purse strap warmed in the spot under my thigh where I'd kept it close. I reached in and pulled out the card I'd printed at the library, the edges trimmed straight. I laid it on the table, face down, the weight of it small but present. You owe her an apology, Mum said again, softer, as if repetition could become truth. I looked at Caitlin. Even with sunglasses, I could see the watery shine at the bottom edge. She didn't want to cry here. I didn't either. I brought something, I said. My voice didn't shake. I slid the card into the space between the plates so it touched the salt shaker. My fingers found the corner and turned it over. I turned the card over so the printed email faced up. The font looked too pretty for what it said. I read it out loud, steady. Your seat won't be needed, I said, the diner clatter going on around us. You can still be great moral support on the live stream. Jolie rolled her eyes like it hurt. Mum opened her mouth, then closed it. Caitlin's hands were under the table. I could see the flex in her forearms. I flipped the card to the other side, to the column of numbers. DJ deposit, $250, refunded. Chairs, $120, refunded. Dress rush, $85, credited. VFW cake stand, $60, returned. I tapped the bottom line. Total $5.15. The table went quiet in the same way the music had yesterday. Cut, sputter, nothing. Forks paused mid-air. The waitress slid past with a pot of coffee and read the air, kept moving. You told me I wasn't welcome in the room, I said to Caitlin. I honoured that. My card stayed outside the room too. Caitlin's jaw moved once, twice. I didn't say not welcome, she said, voice small enough it made me think of us as kids in the back seat. You did, I said and tapped the words again. That's what this means. Mum leaned in. She didn't mean it like that, she said. You know how these venues are? Numbers? Fire codes? She glanced at Jolie like maybe the term would help. It doesn't matter how it was meant. I kept my hands flat on the formica. It mattered how I was told, in writing, 2 days before. Jolie set her spoon down with a click. So you made a point, on her wedding day. I made a boundary, I said. On my money? Dad cleared his throat like a starter pistol that never fires. Feels like a misunderstanding, he tried. It's really clear, I said, and slid the card across into the mess of napkins and syrup rings so that it touched Caitlin's plate. These were booked under my name. They were paid with my card. You asked me not to come. I looked at each of them in turn. I stopped paying for a party I wasn't invited to. Troy rubbed his thumb along the edge of his water glass. I should have followed up with the vendors, he said, looking at the table. That's on me. Jolie shot him a look. No one thought you wouldn't be there, Tori. We just wanted me quiet and useful, I said. That's been the pattern. Mum recoiled like I'd slapped the table. We appreciate you, she said, but it landed flat, like a card with no gift inside. I'm not asking for appreciation. I took a breath. From now on, I'm your sister, not your backup planner. Not your wallet. Caitlin finally took the sunglasses off. Her eyes were red around the edges. You humiliated me, she said, but it sounded more like a question than a sentence. I didn't send the link, I said. I didn't run your music off a phone with notifications on. I didn't seat Grandma on a windowsill. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't show up as a vendor because you told me not to show up as family. No one moved. The plate steamed. The coffee in my cup went from hot to drinkable to cooling while the words hung there. The waitress came by with her pot like she was testing a fence. Top off, she whispered. I'm good, I said, and put $2 under my mug for the coffee. The bills looked small and right-sized. Mum found traction. So what, you're done with us? She folded her napkin into a neat square like she could control paper, if not people. I'm done being assumed, I said. If you need help, ask me. Tell me what it is, when, and what your budget is, and I might say no, that's part of asking. Dad's eyes flicked to the card, then to Mum. He didn't pick it up. Jolie's jaw worked like she had a speech stuck behind her teeth. Troy nodded once, like he'd heard it even if he couldn't carry it. Caitlin touched the card with one finger. She didn't flip it again. She looked at me the way she used to look at me on the couch when a storm knocked the power out and we counted between lightning and thunder. Okay, she said, a word so small it barely took up space. Okay. Mum exhaled hard. We'll talk later, she announced to the table, which is what she says when she doesn't like the terms. I'll be around, I said, but I'm not the emergency fund. I stood. The booth's vinyl squeaked a little under my hands. I hooked my purse over my shoulder and left the card where it sat, the email side up, the refunds side down, both true. Are you leaving? Mum asked, offended, like the diner was a courtroom and I was walking out before sentencing. I have laundry, I said, because it was true and didn't require a debate. Jolie let out a little disbelieving laugh. Must be nice. I didn't answer. I tucked the $2 under my coffee again, then added a third because she let us sit here and make a mess of the air. At the edge of the booth, I paused just long enough to meet Caitlin's eyes. "Congratulations," I said, and meant it. There was a ring on her hand now. They did the part that matters. I let the silence do the rest. I walked out, the bell over the door giving a half-hearted jingle, and left them with the cheque that actually belonged to them. Outside, the cold hit my face like a reset. I breathed in, counted to 4, and headed toward my car. After the diner, I did exactly what I said. I went home, sorted a basket of towels and T-shirts, and fed quarters into the machine in the basement laundry room while the nail salon upstairs clicked its lights off. I set my phone on the dryer face down and watched the drums spin. The first week after, the group chat got quiet in a way that used to mean trouble. This time, it held. Mum sent a photo of leftovers on our parents' table with a heart and no ask attached. Dad forwarded a dumb meme about hardware stores and wrote, "Made me think of you," with a hammer emoji. Delaney texted me a link to a new thrift spot and said, "Wanna go sometime?" Like all of this could still be normal underneath. On Wednesday night, Caitlin texted me directly, no greeting, no build-up. "I'm sorry for that email, it was wrong. Full stop." No but, no you know how it is. I stared at it long enough to feel my heart do that thump it does when something finally lands. "Thanks for saying that," I wrote back. "I accept." I put my phone down and didn't offer store credit for whatever her next tight corner might be. The typing dots didn't appear again. That felt like an answer too. At work, I stopped taking my phone out on my 10-minute. I'd sit on the step by the loading dock and learn the difference between the humming the cooler makes when it's cycling and the one it makes when it's about to throw an alarm. In aisle 8, when the overhead speaker crackled, I could tell if it was a page or a bad connection and fix my face either way. My shift passed in edges straightened and pallets wrapped crisp. Louise asked if I wanted a donut from bakery, and I said yes. The store makes sense when I let it. On Friday, Mum tried a new script. "If you're up for it," she texted, "can you drive Aunt Marcy to her dentist on Tuesday at 3? If not, I'll ask Ron. I can give you gas money." It had time, a plan and an out. I stared at it and checked my schedule posted by the time clock. I was on freezer inventory at 2 that day. "Can't," I typed. "On shift. If she can do after 5, I can." 3 dots then. "No worries, I'll handle." It didn't feel like a fight. It felt like a calendar. Caitlin and Troy announced they wanted a vow moment in Mum and Dad's backyard the next Sunday. Small, just close family, to say the words again without the static. The group text came with details. "Chairs rented," Mum wrote, and attached a receipt from a different company. "Speaker handled by Troy's friend Mike," Troy added. "Will cover costs." Caitlin, "If you're up for it, swing by at 4, no pressure." It sat there, polite and specific. I had a 6 a.m. Monday truck, and the kind of tired that weekend doesn't undo. I thought about standing in that yard, about people looking at me to see what I'd do. I thought about the sentence I'd said in the diner and how I wanted it to be real even when it was boring. I went to the stationery aisle at the store on my break and picked a simple card, white with a thin gold line. At home, I slid a $50 Target gift card inside and wrote "Congratulations" in my neatest, no-frills handwriting. No note. I addressed it to the apartment Caitlin and Troy had just signed the lease for across town and walked it to the blue mailbox on the corner. The clang of the chute felt decisive without being loud. Delaney sent me a photo from the backyard that Sunday, rows of white chairs on Dad's grass, level, a Bluetooth speaker on a little table with a taped-down cord. There was a black clip on Caitlin's bouquet, holding it together where the stems had wanted to shift. "They did it," Delaney wrote. In the background, I could see Mum holding a stack of programs that looked like she'd printed them herself. I tapped a heart and put my phone away. Troy texted me later. "Card came, thank you. Mike said the speaker rental was way cheaper than a DJ. Learned something." It read like a small olive branch. I sent back, "Glad it worked," and left it there. No lecture about contingency plans. No offer to price shop. On Monday, I took 2 pairs of jeans to stitch and hem and used part of the store credit to get the cuffs shortened so they didn't drag at the heel. The woman at the counter pinned them fast and neat. "Back Friday," she said, and I walked out lighter. I've spent more money in my life on other people's rush jobs than I have on pants that fit me. It felt quietly radical to change that. The next ask came a week after that. "Dad, if you're able, can you help me move the old grill to the curb on Saturday morning? I can grab you coffee after." There was time, a task and a barter I could say yes or no to. "Yes," I wrote, 9 works. Saturday, we carried the rusted thing down the side yard, laughing when a wheel tried to make a run for it. He handed me a paper cup from the diner after, coffee burnt the way I like. He didn't say thank you, but he didn't have to. It was in the cup and in the way he didn't hand me any other problems to fix. Jolie stayed out of my phone. I saw her post a filtered photo of the backyard chairs with a caption about resilience and true love. It was fine. That's her job, making everything look clean from far away. At work, the cooler kicked on, and I could tell, without checking the clock, what section needed me. In the group chat, asks started with, "If you're up for it," and ended with, "I can cover." I said yes sometimes. I said no and didn't fill the space after it. No one raised their voice. Silence isn't a punishment if you let it be a room big enough for other people to step into. The next time a family ask arrived phrased like a choice, I read it once and then put my phone face down. For the first time, the quiet between us felt like respect instead of whether I had to report on. I finished facing the aisle before I answered. Then I answered what I meant.
The house only noticed me when something started blinking. Router lights, thermostat warnings, a soft chime from the smart thermostat asking for a filter I'd ordered on my lunch break. It was the kind of attention that feels like a job you never applied for, but somehow keeps showing up to. My name is Livia. I'm 30. I live alone in a 1-bedroom, 10 minutes from my mum's place, and I work as a medical billing specialist. It's spreadsheets, portals, appeals, quiet work that likes people who remember due dates. 2 winters ago, during a cold snap, Mum's gas bill doubled, and she cried on the phone because the heat had kicked off while she was at work. I paid it and told myself it was a one-time thing. Then it was the internet. Just until next month. Then, a spring Saturday, I mowed the yard because the grass was knee-high and the neighbor had posted about snakes on Nextdoor. Somewhere in there, I became the autopay. My mom is Sabrina. She's 58 and practical to a fault. She taught us to stack coupons by expiration date and keep a wrench by the water shutoff. She also learned over time that telling me I'm organized was a way to slide a problem across the table and call it flattery. My sister is Sadie. She's 26 and lives with Mom. She's the kind of person projects land on like a magnet. Vision boards, new paint colors, Pinterest pantries. But she isn't the one on hold with the utility company at 7:58 a.m. when they open. Her fiancé, Eric, is 29 and easygoing until something costs him. He's not unkind. He just likes solutions that don't require his wallet. I didn't move back home after school. I rented my place across town and visit on Sundays after I pick up produce from the cheap market. The practical reason I ended up paying things is dumbly simple. I was close, I had a flexible schedule, and I already had the logins. My job is remote 3 days a week, so I can run over on my lunch, reset a breaker, and be back at my desk by 1:00. If the internet hiccuped, I was the one who already had the support chat open anyway. It made a kind of sense that felt like care. It also added up. Last month, I sat with my bank app and realized I'd spent $283 on a house I didn't live in. $79.99 for internet, $118 to float winter gas, the rest on small things like yard waste stickers and a new GFCI outlet I installed after the old one failed. The first temporary that turned permanent was the electric. 2 winters ago, during an ice storm, Mom's old account got locked because of a fraud alert on her credit reports. I put the electric in my name for a week, so the technician would come. The heat came back. Spring came. The account never migrated back. Nobody decided that out loud. We just didn't have the conversation. "Because you're so organized," Mom would say, handing me a stack of envelopes like I collect them as a hobby. It sounded like pride and felt like work. Sadie's texts, meanwhile, read like I had a spare aisle at Target. "Can you grab paper towels on your way? Need aita AA batteries if you're already going. Eric needs HDMI cord. Amazon faster? Axe." There was never malice in it. There also wasn't a pause to ask if I had a budget that wasn't their budget. Aunt Shiara, my mom's sister, is 55 and the kind of quiet you only notice when she speaks. At Thanksgiving, she put a hand on my wrist and said, "You don't have to be the one who fixes things because you're good at it." I nodded. Then I went outside and cleared leaves out of Mom's gutter because the downspout was overflowing and we were losing daylight. Old habits are louder than one sentence. My friend Audrey is 31 and sits 2 desks over from me on the days we're in the office. She's the person who says, "What would you tell me if I were doing this?" Every time I start explaining why something is fine. I told her I'd set boundaries. She raised an eyebrow and said, "When?" It started like every week. Sunday morning, coffee in a travel mug, toolbox in the trunk because the bathroom towel bar had torn out of drywall. I swung by the hardware store for proper anchors, not the plastic ones, the metal wings, and a pack of LED bulbs because the kitchen overhead flickered. I like quiet, fixable problems. You drill, you patch, you sand, you screw the bracket back in, and it holds. After I patched the towel bar, I mowed the yard. The old mower starts on the second pull if you prime it right. I did the front, then the back, bagged the clippings, and put 2 yard waste stickers on the stack. When I was done, I dragged the bins to the curb and took my usual lap, checked the spigot for drips, make sure the dryer vent wasn't clogged with lint again. I pulled the mail with the spare mailbox key I've had since I was 19. It's brass and smooth like a worry stone from living in my glove compartment. I went to let myself in the front door. The shiny oval on the deadbolt stopped me. New smart lock. Black finish. Keypad glowing 1, 2, 3, 4 in tidy blue. I held my old key in my palm and stared at the door that used to open when I turned it. My stomach did that loose elevator drop. Temporary. My brain had been whispering for 2 years. Standing on the porch with my hands full of other people's fixes, I looked at the smart lock and heard something else. That ended. I knocked because the keypad was glowing like a stop sign. Mom opened fast, like she'd been standing on the other side. Her eyes flicked to my hand, still holding the old brass key, then to the new lock, then back to my face. "Eric put that in," she said, like it was a nice porch light. "Safety." Behind her, I could hear the TV and Sadie laughing at something on her phone. The house smelled like roast and onions. I stepped inside and wiped my shoes on the mat without thinking. Come in," Mom said. Her voice brightened up too hard. She handed me a foil-covered plate before I could shrug off my jacket. "Take this. We did a chuck roast. Carrots came out perfect." The plate was hot against my palm. That was when she said it. Quick, like ripping painter's tape. "We put the house in Sadie's name," she said. "Just streamlining. It makes sense. Avoids a lot later." The word landed and slid. I stared past her at the entry table where my childhood school pictures still leaned against a bowl of keys that weren't mine anymore. "Oh," I said. My mouth remembered congratulations, even if my chest didn't. "That's big. Congrats, Sadie." I said it loud enough for the living room. Sadie popped up from the couch with a fan of paint chips. "I'm thinking sage for the kitchen. Eric says the cabinets should go darker." Eric raised his hand in a lazy wave, eyes still on the game. "Hey, Liv." Mom was already moving, stacking mail into piles. "This is just common sense," she went on. "You don't want probate dragging on, and Sadie's here." "She'll stay close." I shifted the plate to my other hand and nodded, because nodding is a habit. "Makes sense," I said, "because that's what you say when someone has decided a thing without you." "I'll get you the new code," Mom added quickly, not making eye contact. "We're changing the side door later. This one you can just... you know." She mimed pressing numbers on her palm. I looked at her new lock, then at the old deadbolt scar on the doorframe. The plate of roast sweated in its foil. "I put new anchors in the towel bar," I said, because the words were already loaded. "It won't tear out again." "See?" she said, soft and pleased. "You're so organized." On my way out, the living room noises swelled, cans hissing open, Sadie telling Eric he wasn't touching the walls until she taped. Mom stepped onto the porch with me and pulled the door behind us. The new lock chirped and clicked itself home. Through the glass, I could see Sadie over Eric's shoulder, still smiling, still waving like we were all on the same side of this. "Drive safe," Mom said. She tucked a stray hair behind my ear like she used to when I was 14 and late for the bus. "Don't forget you left your gloves in the garage." "I got them," I said, and held up my bag. We stood there for a beat too long, both of us acting like the door wasn't the loudest thing between us. Then I took the stairs. On the drive home, I practiced lines I didn't believe. I'm happy for her. It'll be good for Mom. This was probably the plan all along. The plate slid on the passenger seat at the turns, the gravy smell filling the car until my stomach turned. I stacked the foil in my fridge, showered off grass clippings, and sat on my couch with my laptop open and my bank app glowing. Before I could scroll, my phone rang. Mom. "Hi," I answered. "Hey, sweetheart." Her voice tried for casual and landed tired. "Quick thing. The gas bill is due. $118. I was going to pay it Friday, but with everything going on, could you float it? You're so good at the accounts." I looked at the spreadsheet I keep for myself. Rent, insurance, groceries, and the line I'd added for Mom's house that had quietly grown a second column. I said. "Okay." My thumb hovered over the due date note I'd set a month ago. "And," she rushed on, "we're getting the internet installed at Sadie's new place on Tuesday. They're doing the faster package because, Eric's work-from-home days and the streaming. Install is $240. They need a card to set the appointment. Can you just—" I sat up. "At Sadie's new place," I repeated. "Yes," she said. "Well, here, obviously here, but it'll be her account now. We want to start fresh. Get it out of your hair." She laughed like it was generous. "You're so good with this stuff. You can put it on, and I'll Zelle you when my check clears. Or Sadie will." It's just easier for you to set it. You already have the logins. I glanced at my modem on the shelf, the little green lights that meant I had service I paid for in a place I lived. At their house, the router I'd ordered sat on Mum's TV stand because it was on my card. I could see the checkout screen in my mind, the way the installation fee line item always made me wince. Why not keep the one that's there? I asked. It works. They said new account, new install, Mom said. Eric wants it in Sadie's name so it's official. Clean slate. You know how that is. There it was again. Official. Streamlined. Clean. Words that made messes sound like plans. I opened my bank app and scrolled the last 3 months. Internet, $79.99. Gas, $118. Yard waste stickers, $8.50. Outlet, $16.97. None of it mine and all of it mine. I'll have to think about the install, I said. My voice surprised me by staying even. Don't make this complicated, Mom said gently. It's just a quick thing. You're so good at accounts. After we hung up, I stared at the list until the numbers blurred and sharpened again. Organized, I thought. Good at accounts. I closed the app and sat with my hands quiet in my lap. If I was going to be good at something, it could be endings. I didn't sleep much after the call. In the morning I made a list because that's what I do when I feel spun out. 3 columns. What I pay for, what they use, what ends when. Gas. Internet. Electric from the ice storm mess that never got undone. I added the account numbers from my notes, the customer service hours, the final read option I'd seen buried in a menu. Then I started making calls. Final read for service address? The rep for the gas company asked. She read me a script about timing. I picked the first business day after Sadie's housewarming, Monday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. window. Just so you know, she added, field windows can slide early depending on workload. How early? Sometimes the day before. Sometimes it processes sooner if the meter is remote. You'll get an email. I wrote, window can slide, next to the date, and moved to the next line. Internet. Same thing. Cancel effective the first business day after. Electric. Schedule stop service with a final meter read that Monday. Email confirmations hit my inbox one by one. I dragged them into a folder called House End. By lunch, I'd talked myself hoarse. I texted Mom and Sadie in a new thread so the information didn't get lost. You and Sadie need to put gas, internet, and electric in your names. I'm ending service in my name as of date. I can text account numbers. Mom sent back a heart and, you're so reliable. Sadie replied, can you just leave it till winter? We'll Venmo. No. I typed it, deleted it, then typed it again. I will not keep funding or managing the utilities there. You're the owner, Sadie. I can send the numbers. Don't make this complicated, Mom wrote. We'll pay you back next month. The words didn't set me on fire the way they used to. They just landed with a thud and stayed there. I sent the account numbers. Then I closed my laptop and drove over to the house while I still had the window and while I still had the nerve. I texted Sadie when I parked, grabbing my things from the garage. Kay, she sent back. Doors open. The side door still had the old knob. I pushed into the garage and the smell hit me. Grass, detergent, the faint metallic of tools. My rake was hanging right where I left it. I slid it down. The box of winter gloves I'd bought after that ice storm was under the workbench. The lid popped on one corner. I found the 2 outlet timers I used for the Christmas lights, wound their cords around themselves, and tucked them in my tote. The spare mailbox key was still in the magnetic hide key on the meter. I popped it open out of habit. The little brass key winked at me in the light. I held it, felt the nicks where it rubbed other keys in my glove compartment for a decade, and slipped it into my pocket. They'd forgotten I had it. I hadn't. Liv! Sadie's voice floated in from the back hall. She swept into the garage with a tape measure around her neck and a sheaf of printed photos of other people's kitchens. Okay, Sage in the kitchen, but like a grey undertone. Do you think a runner here or here? She pointed at 2 spots on the concrete, as if rugs would materialize to help decide. I'm just grabbing my stuff, I said. Then I'm out of your way. She nodded, already measuring the back door. Oh, and Eric wanted me to ask, can you just leave the internet up a little longer? His fantasy draft is Sunday, and if the new account's not set by then... No, I said. Calm, like a dial I'd turned. I've scheduled an end. You and Mom need to set up your accounts. She blinked, and then adjusted the tape measure like it was her, not me, that needed straightening. Okay, we'll do it Monday, she said, which told me she hadn't listened to the part about window sliding. Eric leaned in the doorframe, a can in his hand. Come on, Liv, he said, friendly with a thumb on the scale. You know how this stuff takes forever. Just leave it a week. No, I repeated. It's already scheduled. It's not my house. He made a face like he was swallowing something sour but didn't push. Worth a shot, he said, and disappeared. I loaded the rake into my trunk, balanced the box of gloves on top, and shut it with a soft thunk. I took one last look at the neat stacks along the garage wall, my extension cord, my extra filters hanging on a nail. I considered leaving the filters, then I tucked them under my arm. They weren't mine to maintain anymore. Audrey met me for coffee at the place by the office later. She slid into the booth and put her phone face down. You look like you did 10 rounds with a spreadsheet, she said. I made the calls, I said. Final reads, stop service. First business day after the housewarming. She grinned, proud without making me hold it. Okay. Then what? I stop, I said. I felt it in my chest when I said it, like something unclenched. I take the money I've been pouring into that house and I buy tires. I set up an automatic transfer. I buy quiet. Tires, savings, and quiet, she repeated, like an order she was writing on a cup. I like it. We split a scone and talked about nothing for 10 minutes. When she went to leave, I took my phone back out and set 2 reminders. Housewarming, bring plant, and end dates. Confirm. I added a 3rd. Call tire shop. It felt good to have a list that was mine. By the time I got home, the sun was down. I slid the spare mailbox key onto my own hook by my door so I wouldn't forget to return it. My email dinged. Another confirmation, this one from the electric company, a reminder of the stop service date and the window may shift based on workload line. I moved it to the folder. My phone buzzed again, this time with a notification from the family group chat. Mom changed the group photo to a blurry picture of the roast. Then a new message from her popped up in grey. Can Livia handle the utilities? She's already set up. The group chat lit up before I'd even taken my shoes off. Mom's message sat at the top like a sticky note. Can Livia handle the utilities? She's already set up. I stood in my entryway, keys in one hand, phone in the other, and watched the typing bubbles appear. Sadie. Yes, please just till, like, winter. We'll Venmo. Mom. It's just smoother if you manage it. You know the accounts. Eric. I can help switch stuff over. We just need a few days. My draft is Sunday, LOL. The thread name was Family, a photo of us three at a pumpkin patch years ago. I took a breath and typed one message. I will not fund or manage that house. I set the phone on the console table and listened to the apartment hum. My fridge, my heater kicking on. When I picked the phone back up, the chat had stacked itself tall. Mom. Sweetheart, don't be like this. We will pay you back next month. You know how my check timing is? Sadie. I can send $50 RAN and the rest after my shift Friday. Mom. It doesn't have to be ugly. Just keep it going so we don't lose service. Eric. We're not trying to stick you, Liv. It's just a lot to juggle all at once. I typed, deleted, and typed again. I kept it simple. I ended service as of Monday. You and Sadie need to put accounts in your names. I already sent the numbers. 3 dots. Then. Mom. Why would you end it? We have the housewarming Sunday. Sadie. OMG, wait. Can't the electric stay? Don't be dramatic. My thumb hovered. Don't be dramatic. Landed exactly where they meant it to. I scrolled up to my own words and read them like a script I could stand on. I will not fund or manage that house. The bubbles popped up again. Mom. You know how I am with customer service. You're so good at it. Just one more month. Sadie. You know how Mom is just help. We're family. Eric. If the internet guy needs a card, we can use mine Monday. It's just easier if the appointment's in place. I could feel my shoulders creeping up around my ears. I set the phone down and got a glass of water, because doing something with my hands makes me less likely to explain myself into a corner I don't want to be in. When I came back, a new name had chimed in. Ciara. Ownership comes with the bills. Nothing fancy. No emojis. It sat there like a plumb line in a crooked room. The chat went silent long enough that I could hear the traffic outside. Mom, finally. That's not helpful, Ciara. Ciara. It's clear. I opened my email, clicked the folder I'd made, House, End, and forwarded the 3 confirmations to Mom and Sadie. Subject line, for the new owner. In the body I wrote, per our texts, final read, stop, service dates attached. You'll want to open new accounts before then. I did not copy the group chat. Back in the thread, Sadie had sent a crying laugh emoji, and then, Are you serious, RN? What if the lights go off in the party? With 3 surprised faces like that might bend physics. I typed, You have the dates. Set your accounts. Mom. This is not how we do things. We take care of each other. I felt the old pull in that sentence, the way money and care are knotted until you can't find one without the other. I looked at my list on the counter. Tires, savings, quiet, and kept my hands still. Audrey texted me in a separate thread like she had a sensor in her head. How's the line holding? I sent her a photo of the group chat and then one message. That's it. Back in family, Eric had sent a thumbs up and then, Okay, we'll figure it out. Appreciate you, which was as close to a white flag as he had. Mom, we'll discuss Sunday. Don't make a scene. I muted the thread for 8 hours. The apartment felt bigger with the noise damped. I put rice on the stove and pulled leftover roast out of my fridge, peeled the foil back, and laughed once at the steam like that was supposed to be balance. My email pinged, 2 out of office auto replies from utility addresses, Then a third confirmation for the electric. I forwarded that one too with the same subject line. The rhythm of it settled me. Click, attach, send. As I was washing dishes, my phone buzzed again. A new text, this time not in the group. Mom, you're making this ugly, Livia. Sunday came with balloons tied to the mailbox and folding chairs in the yard. I parked a block down because the driveway was full and walked up with a pothos in a terracotta pot and the spare mailbox key in my pocket, heavy like a coin I was ready to spend. Music floated out the open windows, someone's party playlist from a Bluetooth speaker, and the smell of meatballs in sauce hit me at the door. Mom opened before I could knock, like she'd been waiting. Her hug was quick, her shoulders tight. You made it, she said, stepping back. Her eyes did a fast sweep. My hands, the plant, my face. Come in. Put that on the counter. The kitchen was a crush of cousins and neighbours balancing paper plates. Sadie was at the centre, taking everyone to see the paint samples taped to the cabinet doors. Eric stood behind a line of cheap, bubbly like a bartender who hadn't learned the names yet. Liv! Sadie squealed when she saw the plant. It's cute. Where should it go? She set it near the sink without waiting, then turned like she'd just remembered something important. Do you want a tour? I know the layout, I said, smiling so it landed soft. I took the key out of my pocket and set it on the counter between us. And this belongs to the owner. Her face flicked through a couple expressions before it settled. Surprise first, then embarrassment like she'd been caught unprepared, then a shrug that was bigger than it needed to be. She slid the key into the top drawer by the oven with the scissors. Oh, she said. Thanks. Eric popped a cork that made 3 people flinch. Bubbly spilled over his hand and onto the counter. Careful, owner, he said to Sadie, laughing. We don't give out deposit refunds. Stop. Sadie pushed his shoulder, grinning. Mom hovered at my elbow. Get a glass, she said, nudging one at me. She smelled like hairspray and nerves. I poured myself an inch so no one tried to top it off. Across the room, Aunt Chiara stood near the patio door with a plate of cheese and a half smile. She lifted her chin at me in a hello that didn't require me to cross the room. I nodded back. My phone buzzed in my back pocket. I pulled it out under the counter and saw the subject line before the rest loaded. Electric service update. The preview text read, Your stop service window has been adjusted due to field workload. I opened it. Due to workload, your final read may occur earlier than scheduled. Service may be interrupted prior to the requested date time. We apologize for any inconvenience. I felt my heart beat in my throat. I clicked the account number to be sure it was their address. It was. I locked the screen and slid the phone away. The room was loud in an ordinary way. Someone telling a story about a fender bender, kids arguing over a cupcake. I wasn't going to stand in the middle and announce a utility update like weather. Everyone, Eric called, tapping his plastic cup with a butter knife. Gather up. Toast time. New chapter, new owner, same low mortgage payment. He laughed at himself, pleased. Mortgage adjacent, baby. Eric, Sadie said, but she was smiling too, flush with attention. People shuffled closer, shoulder to shoulder around the island. The overhead light threw a warm cone over the counter, the same light I'd replaced the bulb in last month because it was flickering. Mom slid in next to me and put her hand on my forearm. It read like a warning more than a gesture. Be nice, she murmured without moving her lips. I am, I said, and lifted my cup. Eric lifted his, suds clinging to the rim. To Sadie, he boomed. To being official, and to the best housewarming party with the best people. He glanced at me then, eyebrows up, as if inviting me to nod along. And to Mom, for making all this possible. Streamlined, Mom said, her laugh thin. I felt my phone buzz again against my hip, another email probably, or the calendar reminder I'd set for end dates. Confirm. I didn't look. I focused on the plant's leaves, the little new growth at the tip, glossy and unbothered by human ceremony. Eric raised his glass higher. May the Wi-Fi be fast and the bills be... The kitchen lights blinked. Once, a quick flutter like an eyelid. The music from the speaker hiccuped, and he looked up, joking on his tongue. Paid, he finished, and then the whole room gave a small collective sound as the lights dimmed to a hum, flickered again, and went black. The fridge's low thrum cut out. The speaker died mid-beat. For a second, there was just the residual sound of people breathing and a kid's "Hey!" from the hallway. Someone near the back said, "Breaker." Automatically, Eric set his cup down in the dark and fumbled toward the hall where the electrical panel lives. Sadie's head turned toward me in the smudged reflection of the microwave door. Mom's hand tightened on my arm like a reflex. The room inhaled as one and held it. The house, for once, didn't ask me for anything. Someone near the sink tried a joke. "Who forgot to pay the light bill?" And it broke into nervous laughter that died fast. The little battery candle on the counter kept flickering like it was embarrassed to still be on. "Breaker," Eric said again, more to himself. He disappeared down the hall, bumping a shoulder into the doorway. Drawers opened and closed in the half-dark. The fridge gave one last click and went quiet. "Did you do this?" Sadie's voice reached me before her face did. Her eyes were wide and shiny in the reflective black of the microwave. She wasn't yelling. It sounded like she genuinely wanted a yes so she could tell a story about me later. I set my cup down. "Not my house," I said. "Ask the owner." Mom's hand squeezed my arm hard enough to sting. "Livia," she hissed, low and breathy, years of warning tucked inside my name. "I'm not doing anything," I said, level. "I ended service, I told you." They moved the window. "This is not the moment," she said, and for a second I saw the math whirring behind her eyes, food spoiling, guests murmuring, the image of a perfect handoff sliding. From the hall. "It's not the breaker," Eric called. "Everything's on. Panel's fine." He was panting a little like he'd run a lap. "Let me call..." He cut himself off, maybe remembering who the account was, under or wasn't. "Who do we call?" Sadie asked, her voice pitching up. "The electric company," I said. "Under your account." She stared at me like I'd just switched to a language she didn't speak. "We don't have one yet," she said, as if that proved something in her favor. "Right," I said. Ciara drifted over, plate empty, eyes steady. "You've got flashlights in the junk drawer," she told Sadie. "Candles under the sink. Keep the fridge closed." It wasn't scolding. It was a map. Sadie opened the junk drawer and rummaged. The key I'd just given her flashed in the top drawer when she pulled it open by mistake. "Where are the... Why is there so much tape?" She looked helpless for a breath, and then put her chin up, switching into project manager voice. Okay, everybody, outside, backyard, it's nice out. We'll do sparklers or something. She clapped, smiling big and bright enough to throw off light. People moved because that's what people do when told with confidence. Eric reappeared in the kitchen doorway with his phone to his ear. Hold music, he said. Of course. He looked at me like I might have a shortcut through it. I didn't offer one. Mom's whisper pressed into my shoulder. Fix this, she said. I can't, I said, stepping back. It's not in my name anymore. It shouldn't have been this long. She flinched like I'd reached out first. You're making a scene, she said. I'm leaving, I said. That's the opposite. I moved toward the side door because the front was a jam of bodies. Kiara's hand touched my elbow as I passed, a brief anchor. You okay to drive? She asked, the question small and practical. Yep, I said. Text me if you need anything that's mine. It sounded more bitter than I meant. She nodded anyway. On the patio, the Bluetooth speaker sputtered back to life for half a second on its internal battery, and then quit. Cousins were already turning their phone flashlights on and laughing too loudly. Sadie caught up with me at the steps, breath fast. Wait, she said. Can you just... She glanced over her shoulder toward the house and dropped her voice. We were going to fix the water heater Monday. It's been clicking. The guy wants a deposit. $300 just until Monday, please. Something in me wanted to say yes, out of habit, a muscle memory. I could hear Audrey's voice in my head. What would you tell me if this were me? I opened my messages and typed it so I didn't have to hold it between my teeth. I will not fund or manage that house. I hit send. Sadie's phone buzzed in her hand. She looked down, then up. You're really doing this, she said, not a question. I already did, I said. I slid my keys onto my finger. You need to open accounts. She blinked hard, like the party smoke stung. What about Mom? She asked, last grab. What about Mom? I said, and immediately hated the echo. She can't keep asking me for this. Wow, Sadie said, stepping back like I'd splashed her. Okay. She tucked her hair behind her ear and squared her shoulders back toward the yard. Enjoy your quiet. Thanks, I said, because that was actually the plan. In the driveway, my phone lit up with a swarm of texts, as if the chat had been damned and just found a crack. Family thread. Mom, come back inside. Don't leave like this. Sadie, this is mean. Eric, we'll take care of it. Just chill. Unknown number. This is the power company automated line. We can't complete your request without account owner verification. Oh, that one was to Eric. Forwarded. I kept moving. I got in the car and shut the door. The inside was its own pocket of quiet. I took a breath and started the engine. As I pulled away, the house looked like a photograph of a house. Outlines and people moving like shadows in the yard, candles bobbing in hands. My phone buzzed again and again on the console until it didn't. A last ping, then nothing but the soft hum of my own heater and the turn signal ticking me through the left onto Maple. By the time I hit the main road, the messages had slowed to a trickle. One from Ciara. Drive safe. One from Audrey. You good? And then the screen stayed dark. The neighborhood streetlights threw puddles of light onto the asphalt at regular, reasonable intervals. I drove through each one and let my shoulders drop an inch at a time. Monday started with 3 texts from Mom, stacked like plates. 11:42 p.m. This is on you. People were here. 7:09 a.m. I don't understand why the electric cut if you scheduled Monday. 9:31 a.m. Call me. We need to start fresh. I read them in order while my coffee dripped. I didn't answer the first two. For the third, I typed, I can talk after work. On my commute, I called the tire shop I'd flagged. 2 for the front, I told the guy. He quoted me $256 installed for mid-range all seasons, plus $12 for disposal. Tuesday at 5:30 worked. I booked it and put a note in my calendar. It felt like moving money back where it belonged. By mid-morning, the group chat had unmuted itself by volume. Sadie. They want a deposit? $150 just to turn the lights on? This is robbery. Eric. Same-day fee is $95 if we want it today. Monday service is next available. Mom. I'm on hold with the gas. They say a tech has to come to read the meter before transfer. Who knew? Sadie. They gave me a 12:4 window tomorrow. I can't miss a shift. I put my phone face down and opened the billing portal at work. Codes and claim notes clicked my brain back into a rhythm I control. Audrey slid an iced coffee onto my desk around 11. How's the line? She asked. Holding, I said. They're meeting the consequences in the wild. She grinned. Tires tomorrow? Yep. 2 up front. Savings transfer Friday. At lunch, my phone buzzed with a call from a local number I didn't have saved. Ciara. Just checking in, she said when I answered. Proud of you. It came out flat and solid in a way that didn't require me to perform gratitude. Thanks, I said. They'll figure it out. They will, she said. And if they don't, they'll learn. After work, I called Mom. She got to hello and then went right into it. It was humiliating, she said. All those people, the lights. Your aunt. I told you, I said. I set end dates. I sent confirmations. You could have warned me about the window, she said. I did, I said. Twice, in text and in the email. Silence, then a softer exhale. We got it back on this afternoon, she said. $85 to reconnect. They want a deposit on Sadie's account. Internet can't come until Friday. Gas is sending someone tomorrow between 10 and 2. She'll miss work. I'm sorry it's a hassle, I said. And I meant it. Hassles are awful. But that's what owning something is. Bills, windows, deposits. I thought you were helping, she said, and it wasn't sharp. It sounded tired. I was, I said. For 2 years. I'm not anymore. She sat with that. Okay, she said finally. Can we start fresh? Yes, I said. Starting fresh means I don't fund or manage that house. A beat. Then what does it mean? She asked, small. It means I come over for dinner because I want to, I said. It means if you need a ride to a doctor, I'm there. It means I'm not a bank account with a person attached. She didn't apologize. That would have been a different family. But she said, okay, in a way that made space. Come Sunday, I'll make chicken. We'll keep it simple. Sunday is fine, I said. Tuesday after work, I sat in a plastic chair at the tire place and watched my car lift on the hydraulics. The bill was $268 with tax. I tapped my card and slid the receipt into my wallet. On the drive home, the steering felt steadier. I could feel the difference in my hands. Wednesday, maintenance from my building knocked at 3:10. I'd emailed the property manager Monday morning to ask about adding a second deadbolt. She replied within an hour with a yes and a $35 work order. "Just sign here," the maintenance guy said. 20 minutes later, there was a new cylinder above the old one, keyed to my existing key. He tested it once, then had me do it. The click was clean. Thursday, I set up an automatic transfer, $150 every payday, into a savings account I renamed Quiet. My bank app put a little green check next to it. I turned my ringer off that night and slept like someone had turned off a machine in the corner of the room I didn't know had been humming. Mom texted pictures Friday morning of a new modem on a shelf and a technician's shoes by the rug. Sadie chimed in with a blurry selfie and a caption, "We have Wi-Fi," followed by a middle finger to the electric company joke that wasn't subtle. Eric wrote, "Water heater guy came. Put it on my card. Adulting is dumb. There were no requests folded in, just broadcast." I sent a thumbs up and went back to my claims. Sunday I picked up a store-bought pie and drove over. The key code Mom had texted me Wednesday worked. The house looked like itself in the soft ways. Same creak in the hallway. Same picture of us in front of a pumpkin. The difference was that the cables under the TV were labeled with Sadie's handwriting, and the internet bill on the counter had her name on it. Dinner was quiet in a good way. Sadie talked about paint, Eric about a stupid thing his co-worker did with a forklift. Mom kept fussing with my plate and finally sat. When I got up to leave, she walked me to the door. "I'm trying," she said, "to not make money into things." "I know," I said. I put my hand on the new deadbolt because it was something I could touch. "Me too." On the way home, I stopped at the hardware store for a cheap brass hook. Back at my apartment, I screwed it into the wall by my door and hung my keys. Then, I turned both deadbolts and listened. 1, then 2. I tested them again, just because I could. The clicks were mine.
2 weeks was the promise. I even wrote it on a sticky note and stuck it to the fridge. 2 weeks. It made me feel in control, like I'd set a boundary anyone could see. It's still there, curling at the edges 9 months later. My name is Zoe Roberts. I'm 32 and I process insurance claims at a paediatric clinic. I own a small 2-bedroom unit in a beige duplex on a quiet street, lived alone, liked it that way, kept the second bedroom as a guest room and laundry folding zone. My younger sister, Jordan, is 27. She moved into that room after she and her boyfriend, Jace Newman, blew up at each other, and she said she just needed a place to land for 2 weeks. She showed up with 2 duffel bags, a box of shoes, and her dog. I made up the bed with clean sheets and told myself I was doing the kind thing. 2 weeks stretched. It's amazing how easily life expands around someone else's stuff. Her tote bags on the dining chairs, her shampoo bottles in the shower caddy, the TV blaring shows I never watch. I'd come home from my clinic shift, 8 to 4:30 most days, sometimes a late call to chase down prior auths, and there'd be a sink of dishes I didn't cook with, and a TV I didn't turn on. The dog wagged like I was home for them both. She'd kiss his nose and say, "He missed you," like that was payment. Money got weird in quiet ways. I paid the mortgage like always. The electric bill crept up, $142 in July, $128 the next month when we weren't running the window unit as hard. Groceries did what they do with 2 mouths. I'd spent 80-something on basics after work, watch the good yoga and the decent coffee disappear, and budget again. When her dog needed a quick vet check for scratchy ears, the bill was $78. I remember the number because I put the receipt on the fridge under a magnet. "I'll get you back next month, I promise," she said, smiling like we both knew next month was magic. Next month became a script. I'd say, "Hey, can you send me $50 toward groceries?" And she'd answer, "Next month, I promise," with that soft laugh that feels like a pat on the head. Can you cover half the internet this time? Next month? The electric. Next month. I kept waiting for the month when the promise turned into cash, like a plane finally landing after circling. Our mum, Mary, is good at making a guilt sandwich out of love. Family first, she said on the phone the second week in. Jordan's heartbroken. She's not herself. Later, when I mentioned the bills, Mum said, "You have a good job, Zoe. She's catching up. Don't nickel and dime your own sister." I let the conversation slide because I hate fighting. Conflict makes my chest feel tight, like I'm the one on trial. It was easier to stay quiet and do the math again. I'm not painting Jordan as a villain. She'd fold laundry sometimes, and she'd cook one big pot of something on a Sunday and leave the lid half on like a gift. She talked about job applications in vague waves, applied to 3 places, maybe heard back from 1. She'd say, "Jace was so controlling," and I'd nod because I believed her and because it kept us in the shallow end where it felt safe. But every end of the month was me at the dining table with a pen and a stack of envelopes, writing checks and logging into accounts, and her in the doorway saying, "Next month." I started keeping a little list in the notes app on my phone, not to build a case, just to make sure I wasn't losing my mind. Electric, water, internet, groceries, dog food when she forgot, a bottle of dish soap, the $78 vet bill. The list didn't judge me. It sat there in plain numbers. I told my cousin Hannah about it over coffee one Saturday. She's my age neighbour and my reality check. "You have to be clear, Zoe," she said. "People hear yes until they hear no." I said I'd say something firmer. Then I didn't, not really. I asked softer instead, hoping she'd feel the edge without me raising my voice. Nights were the worst. I'd get home, hang my clinic badge on the hook by the door, and listen to the TV bleed through the wall even when she wasn't there, endless chatter and canned laughter. I'd rinse dishes I didn't dirty, wipe down a counter already damp, and stare at that curling sticky note that said 2 weeks. I told myself being generous was better than being hard. I told myself family gets a longer runway. I didn't know the turning point would show up as a text from my cousin. Hannah texted me at 3:12 p.m, right between a denied nebulizer claim and a parent on hold asking if a referral expired. "You need to see this," she wrote. And there was a little screen recording icon. I watched with my headset around my neck. The video opened on my living room, my couch, my throw blanket, the coffee table with the water ring I can't get out. Jordan was tucked into the corner like it was her set. 2 girls I recognised from her feed draped on the other cushions. Someone off camera snorted, the camera shifted, and Jordan said, bright and careless, "Why would I pay? Zoe's too soft to bill family." The room laughed. The dog hopped up and someone squealed, "He's so cute." The clip ended on Jordan smirking. It felt like a slap I didn't see coming. And then something just shut off. Not my face. My face stayed neutral like it does when a parent yells at me over a copay we don't set. Inside, the part of me that kept hoping next month would behave finally sat down and folded its hands. I texted back, "Where did you get that?" Hannah replied, "It was on Chelsea's story. I grabbed it before she deleted. I'm sorry." "Thank you," I wrote. Then I saved the clip to my phone and emailed it to myself because I know how fast things disappear online. I finished my shift, locked my drawer, and drove home with the radio off. The sticky note that said 2 weeks was still curling on the fridge. I took it down, not dramatically, just because I needed it gone if I was going to do this right. I'm not a lawyer. I don't even like telling people I need the $20 they promised me back. But I can read. I googled month-to-month room rental agreement, my state, clicked a couple of reputable sites and downloaded a basic template. I filled in what mattered, $950 rent, due on the 1st of each month. Half the utilities, due within 5 days of the bill. A $500 security deposit, refundable if she didn't wreck the place. No subletting, no extra guests staying more than 3 nights without approval. Quiet hours after 10 because I get up at 6. Start date 30 days from today. I printed 3 copies on my cheap printer that always smells a little like hot plastic and paper dust. I initialed the bottom of each page like I'd seen landlords do. I put a pen on top of the stack. Jordan came in around 6 with the dog's leash in her hand and takeout that smelled like sesame oil. "Hey," she said, like a roommate, not like someone who'd just told the internet I was too soft to bill family. "Hey," I said, and kept my voice calm. "We need to go over something." She dropped the bag on the counter and peeled the lid back to steal a piece of broccoli. "I have an interview tomorrow," she said, as if that answered a question. "That's good," I said. I picked up the papers and sat on the couch. I put together a month-to-month lease. Starting 30 days from today, the rent is $950, half the utilities, $500 deposit. Due dates are marked. House rules are standard. She blinked, then laughed like I'd told a joke at the wrong time. "You're charging me rent? Are you serious?" "I've been covering everything for 9 months," I said. "This is fair." "I told you I'd pay you back next month," she said, softer, coaxing. The same voice she used on the dog when she wanted him to drop a sock. "You've said that every month," I said. I slid the papers across the coffee table. "You can look this over. If you're okay with it, we'll both sign. If you don't want to sign, that's fine too, but then you'll need to find another place before the start date." She didn't pick up the pen. She leaned back and looked at me like she was trying to see the outline of a stranger. "Wow," she said. "Charging family like a landlord." "I am a landlord," I said. "I own this place." She stood up, paced to the kitchen, then back, hands flipping in that restless way she has when she's cornered. "This is insane," she said. "Mom is going to lose it." "I'm not arguing with you," I said, same even tone I use at work when I have to repeat the policy. "These are the terms. You have 30 days to decide." She stared at the top page again, read the deposit amount out loud like it was a curse, and then she did the thing she always does when she wants backup. She smirked, tapped her phone awake with her thumb and said, "I'm looping Mum in." Mum called 5 minutes after Jordan's thumbs started flying in the group chat. I could hear dishes clinking on her end, the soundtrack to every talk where she tries to soften me up. "What is this I'm hearing?" she said without hello. "You're charging your sister rent. Zoe, that's selfish." "It's not selfish," I said, keeping my voice level. "It's a month-to-month lease, 30 days to start. Or she can find another place before then." "She just had her life turned upside down," Mum said. "You have a good job. You don't nickel and dime family." "I'm not nickel and diming," I said. "I've been paying for everything for 9 months. This is the boundary." "Boundary," she repeated like it was a bad taste. "You're humiliating her." "I'm following a process," I said. "We can talk more later. I have to finish something." I hung up before I stepped on a landmine. Then I did what I always do when I don't want to argue. I went to the internet. I typed "how to give 30-day notice to terminate month-to-month my state" and read 3 different sites until the language matched. I learned that once someone stays more than 30 days, they're a tenant, even without a lease. That I could end a month-to-month with 30 days written notice. That I didn't need a reason beyond "I'm ending it." I opened a blank document and wrote it out in plain words. "Notice to terminate month-to-month occupancy. This is written notice that your month-to-month occupancy will terminate 30 days from today on date. If you wish to continue living here, we must both sign the attached month-to-month rental agreement before that date. If no agreement is signed, you must vacate by 11:59 p.m. on date and return keys. Utilities owed through your move-out date remain your responsibility." I put the lease draft behind it. I printed 2 copies of the notice and 2 of the lease. On the bottom of the notice, I added a line that said, "Please sign and return 1 copy to acknowledge receipt." I taped 1 set to the hallway door outside Jordan's room, chest height where she couldn't miss it. I took a photo with the date and time stamped in the corner. I slid the other set into an email and sent it to her and to Mom with a simple subject: "Notice and lease terms." In the body, I wrote, "Attaching for your records." The dog barked at the tape, then sniffed it and sneezed. Jordan brushed past without looking at me, pulled the notice down, skimmed the first line, and slapped it back onto the door so hard the tape peeled. Cabinet doors took the hit next. Bang, 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 like the kitchen was responsible. Music came up from her speaker, loud enough to rattle the drawer with my takeout menus. "What are you doing?" she yelled over the bass. "Posting notices on my door like I'm a deadbeat?" "I'm giving you written notice," I said evenly. "You asked me to be clear." She laughed without humour and stomped to her room. A minute later, she came back out and put the music up another notch. "Guys!" she shouted into her phone on speaker. "Guess who's charging family like a landlord?" Someone whooped in response. I didn't answer. I opened the Notes app where my list lived and started a separate folder on my desktop called House. I scanned the $78 vet bill, dropped in screenshots of the electric bills, saved Hannah's clip and our text thread, and dragged the photo of the taped notice in. I printed hard copies and slid them into a cheap manila folder. Not because I wanted to fight, but because I was done trying to win on feelings. Hannah texted, "Are you okay?" "Taking steps," I wrote back. At work the next day, I set calendar reminders like I do for renewal authorizations. 10 days, 20 days, a week out, 3 days, 1 day. At home, I circled the date on the little free calendar I got from the oil change place and wrote "lease or vacate" in black pen. The sticky note that used to say 2 weeks was gone. The spot looked cleaner without it. Jordan adjusted to the new reality by getting loud. She blasted music at 9:59 like it proved a point. She slammed drawers. She narrated on the phone how unfair I was, how I was kicking her out when I knew she was still healing. She cooked a messy stir-fry and left the pan soaking like an apology I hadn't asked for. When I tried to watch something quiet on my laptop, she flopped onto the other couch cushion and sighed theatrically, like the air itself was wrong. I didn't take the bait. When she asked, "So you're really doing this?" I said, "Yes." When Mum called again to say, maybe just give her a few more months, I said, "No, 30 days. When the music crept past 10, I tapped on the wall once and then put in earplugs. The lease stayed on the coffee table with the pen on top. The notice stayed on the door with a second strip of tape. I stopped making small talk about interviews or Jace. I cooked my meals, washed my dishes, and went to bed early so I could get up at 6 and be civil at the clinic. Time did what it always does. It moved. The oil change calendar filled up with little X's. 10 days out, nothing. A week out, nothing. 3 days out, she scoffed when I reminded her. The night before, she was out late and the dog paced the hall. Day 30 landed on a Tuesday. I got home from work, checked the door, checked the coffee table. No signatures, no deposit, no lease. Just the same papers, a curled piece of tape, and a quiet house that felt like it was holding its breath with me. Day 31 started with 2 strangers on my couch and my pantry looking like a before photo. One girl I recognised from the video, Chelsea, was face down with a blanket. The other was new, long braids spilling over my throw pillow, the dog paced, nails clicking, confused by the extra bodies. "Who are these people?" I asked, keeping my voice even. "They just crashed," Jordan said from the kitchen, digging in the cereal box like it might refill itself. "It was late. Don't be dramatic." "You know the rule about guests more than 3 nights," I said out of habit, even though technically nothing was signed. The rule existed on paper. The reality was a living room with someone else's shoes under my coffee table. "It's not 3 nights," she said, rolling her eyes. "Relax." My coffee grounds were gone. The glass jar sat there empty with the scoop inside like a joke. I rinsed it out, drank water, and went to work early to avoid watching them stretch and yawn their way into my day. At lunch, I took my salad to an empty break room, opened my laptop, and typed "file eviction, my county" into the search bar. The county portal was clunky but clear enough if you read every line. I clicked unlawful detainer, filled in my name, the property address, Jordan's full name, checked the box that said no written lease, and attached the documents, the 30-day notice, the photo of it taped to the door with the timestamp, and a copy of the email I sent. I put "failure to vacate after proper notice" in the reason line. The fee was $185, and I entered my card number and felt the pinch in my stomach the way I do at the mechanic when they add a filter I forgot about. Sheriff's service was another $35. I paid that too. A confirmation popped up with a case number and a line that said, "Hearing date, set by clerk, notice to follow." I printed the confirmation to PDF, emailed it to myself, and dropped it into the house folder on my desktop. I wiped vinaigrette off my keyboard and went back to denied claims and prior auths like nothing was different, even though everything was. That evening, the couch girls were gone, but their cups weren't. The dog's water bowl was tipped, a wet crescent on the mat. I mopped it up and was halfway through wiping the coffee table when there was a knock I felt in my bones. Firm, official, the opposite of Jordan's friend's fingertip taps. I opened the door to a man in a tan uniform, badge catching the porch light. "Evening," he said. "Deputy McBride with the sheriff's office. I'm looking for Jordan Roberts." Jordan appeared behind me like she'd been waiting. "That's me," she said, smile already pasted on. He checked his clipboard, then met her eyes. "I have civil court documents for you." He held out the packet. The top page had the court's seal in blue, the case number, the words "summons and complaint" in heavy letters. She let out a short laugh. "Are you serious right now?" "It's a civil matter," he said, not unkind. "Your sister has filed an unlawful detainer. Your hearing is on." He looked at another page. "The 15th at 9 a.m. At the county courthouse, courtroom B. You're required to appear or file a written response. Failure to do so may result in a default judgment." Her eyes flicked to the seal, then to me, like I'd sketched it myself. The colour drained a little from her cheeks. "This is insane," she said, but softer than before. He turned to me. "Are you Zoe Roberts?" "Yes." He handed me a small white slip with the case number, the date, and the courtroom in neat print. "For your records. The sheriff's office will file proof of service with the court. In the meantime, don't change locks or shut off utilities. Let the court process play out." "I know," I said. "Thank you." He nodded, tipped his head once at Jordan. "You've been served." He stepped back onto the porch and was gone, the sound of his boots steady down the walkway. For a beat, the house didn't breathe. The dog sat, head tilted like he understood the shift. Jordan held the packet like it might burn. Then she snapped back into motion. "You called the cops on me?" she demanded. "It's not the cops," I said. "It's the process." She fumbled with the pages, flipping to the part about the hearing. Her mouth moved as she read. "I can't believe you're doing this," she said, voice going high the way it does when she wants someone else to jump in and save her. "Mom is going to." "You can call Mom," I said. "The date is on there." She glared at me, but it didn't land the way it used to. The seal had done its work. She stormed to her room, the packet crinkling in her fist, and the door shut hard enough to make my picture frames vibrate. In the quiet afterward, I set the little white slip on the counter, next to the dog treats and the empty coffee jar, and looked at the date like it was a finish line I could actually see. Mum showed up the next afternoon without texting first, the way she does when she thinks surprise gives her the upper hand. She set her purse on my counter like she was staking a claim and went straight in. "How could you do this to your sister?" she said. "Serving her with papers? Zoe, that is humiliating." "The sheriff's office served her," I said, keeping my tone even. "I filed after 30 days' notice. This is the process." She blinked at the door where the notice was still taped, a fresh strip holding it flat. The little X's on the oil change calendar looked like I'd drawn them just to prove a point. "You could have given her more time," she said. "She's been through enough." "I gave her 9 months, I said. I pointed to the dates circled, the email thread open on my laptop, the copy of the notice on the coffee table. This is the process. Jordan stood half in her doorway, arms folded, eyes glossy. "She wants to make me homeless," she announced to the kitchen, like it was an audience. "You have a hearing," I said. "You can tell the judge your side." Mum's mouth went thin. "I didn't raise you to be cold." "I'm not being cold," I said. "I'm being clear." They left in a storm of hurt looks. After the door shut, the house exhaled, and I finally did what I should have done months ago. I built a binder. I found a cheap white 3-ring in the hall closet and a pack of sticky tabs. I slid a piece of printer paper in the front sleeve and wrote house in block letters. Inside, I made sections: notices, bills, messages, photos, video. In notices, I put the lease draft and the 30-day notice, each with a sticky on top, dates in pen. In bills, I put copies of the electric, water, and internet statements for the month since she'd moved in, and the $78 vet receipt right up front because it was small but undeniable. In messages, I slid in printed screenshots of the email with the notice, my text exchange with Hannah where she sent the clip and I saved it, and my calendar reminder page. In photos and video, I printed the photo of the notice on her door with the timestamp. I also put a little checklist of what I was bringing to court: ID, 3 copies of anything I thought the court might want, my case number, the confirmation page from the county portal. The act of hole-punching paper felt ridiculous and comforting at the same time, like packing a parachute you hope you won't have to pull. Hannah texted, "Do you want me there on your court day?" "I think I've got it," I wrote back. "Thank you for the video." "Play it loud," she sent, then a single coffee cup emoji. The days between service and the hearing didn't stretch. They rattled. Jordan shifted tactics. No more guests on the couch. No music after 10. Instead, she cleaned like she was auditioning. She scrubbed the bathroom grout with a toothbrush. She lined up spices like soldiers. She wiped baseboards I never look at. The dog got 2 baths in 1 week, the second one with a towel of mine she didn't ask to use. She didn't hand me a dime. "See," she said one afternoon, holding up a sparkling sink, "I'm trying." "Great," I said. "The utilities still need to be paid." She tutted, a sound our grandmother used to make. "Next month." At work, I told my supervisor I needed the morning of the 15th off for a court matter. "Everything okay?" she asked. "It will be," I said. She moved a couple of claims off my queue and told me to take whatever time I needed. I added court to the same oil change calendar, underlining it twice. The night before the hearing, I laid out clothes like I was 15 and about to take the SAT. Navy slacks, a soft grey blouse that didn't wrinkle, the black cardigan with no pills, flats I could stand in without fidgeting. I put my binder, my ID, and a phone charger in my tote, slid my hair tie around my wrist, and set 3 alarms 9 minutes apart because I know myself. Sleep was thin. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that blue court seal and heard my mom saying humiliating. At 5:30, I gave up, made weak coffee because I still hadn't replaced the good grounds and fed the dog because Jordan had slept in, and he looked at me like I was the constant he could count on. At 8:20, I locked the door behind me. The courthouse smelled like old paper and disinfectant. Security was a tray for my tote and a quick pass through the metal detector. Courtroom B had a hallway outside with a row of plastic chairs and a bulletin board full of flyers for mediation, legal aid, and landlord-tenant rights. A clerk with a crisp ponytail checked me in with my case number and told me to wait to be called. Jordan arrived 5 minutes later in a dress I recognised from a wedding 2 summers ago, eyeliner a little smudged. She clocked me, then scanned the hall like she expected applause. When a couple in suits looked up, she let her face crumple just enough to read hurt without messing her mascara. "I can't believe my own sister," she said to no one, voice small but carrying. I took the end seat, opened my binder to the tab that said photos, video, and pulled out my phone. I found the clip Hannah had sent, turned the volume up 2 notches and pressed play for half a second, just long enough to hear my own couch and my sister's voice saying, bright and careless, "Why would I pay?" Before I paused it and slid the phone face down on my knee. A clerk opened the door to courtroom B and called our case number. "Before you see the judge, would you be willing to try mediation?" she asked, eyes flicking between us. "Yes," I said. Jordan said, "I guess," like it was a trap. We were led down a short hallway into a small room with a table that had seen 1,000 arguments. A man in a navy tie stood and gave us a measured smile. "Good morning. I'm Vincent Wong, one of the court mediators. I'm not a judge and I don't give legal advice. This is a confidential conversation to see if you can reach an agreement today. If you do, we'll put it in writing, and the court can adopt it. If you don't, you'll go back in and the judge will hear your case. Does that make sense?" We both nodded. He slid a legal pad in front of him and uncapped a pen. Ground rules are simple. One person speaks at a time, keep voices calm, and focus on what you need moving forward. Jordan, do you want to go first? Jordan took a breath like she was stepping onto a stage. We're sisters, she said, already watery. I had a bad breakup. I moved in for 2 weeks and then life happened. She blindsided me with papers and a sheriff at my door. I've been trying to get back on my feet. She wants to make me homeless because I can't cut a cheque on command. Vincent nodded as he wrote, Thank you. Specifics help me help you both. Zoe? I let her move in 9 months ago, I said. I pay the mortgage, all utilities, groceries. I put a 2-week note on the fridge. I asked for contributions and got next month every time. I gave her a written 30-day notice. I slid a copy across the table. With a start date and a lease option, she didn't sign. I filed because day 30 came and went. I'm not trying to embarrass her. I just want my house back and some of the utilities covered. He read the notice, flipped to the photo of it on her door with the timestamp. Do you have documentation of the bills you're asking to be reimbursed for? Yes. I opened my binder to the bills tab and passed him copied statements, electric, water, internet. The $78 vet receipt sat on top. I'm not asking for back rent, just something toward utilities. Jordan huffed. She's acting like I'm a squatter. I cleaned the whole place this week. Vincent held up a hand gently. I hear that this is emotional. Today we're looking for a practical way to resolve it. If we don't, the judge will likely decide possession. A mediated agreement can avoid an eviction judgment on anyone's record if complied with. He looked at me. Anything else relevant you want me to consider? I have a short video, I said, keeping my tone neutral. It's from my living room. He glanced at Jordan. Is it okay if she plays it? Jordan's jaw set. Whatever. I turned my phone volume up 2 bars and pressed play. My couch, my throw, Jordan's voice, clear as if she were in the room. Why would I pay? Zoe's too soft to bill family. Laughter. The dog hopping up. The clip ended. The room went quiet except for the courthouse HVAC hum. Jordan stared at a corner of the table. Vincent made a small note and didn't comment. All right, he said after a beat. Here are the options I see. 1, you go back to court and the judge decides today. 2, you reach an agreement here. Typical terms in a situation like this are a specific move-out date, a payment amount towards utilities, an agreement on the condition of the space, and a plan for the keys. In exchange, Zoe would agree to dismiss the case if Jordan complies, meaning no eviction judgment for Jordan. If there's a default, the court can enter judgment without another hearing. Does that track? It tracks, I said. My proposal is move out in 10 days, pay $600 toward utilities on or before that date, leave the room and common areas broom clean, no new charges after she leaves, I won't pursue back rent, and I'll dismiss once I have the keys and the $600. 10 days? Jordan said, incredulous. That's nothing. I need a month. Vincent looked at her, calm. You've already had a 30-day notice period. If you don't reach an agreement today, the judge could award possession to Zoe as early as this morning, and the sheriff would schedule a lockout after that. A negotiated move-out date avoids the record and gives you certainty. What can you realistically do? She chewed her lip. 2 weeks, she said. And I can't do 600. What can you do? Vincent asked. 300, she said. I shook my head once. 600 is less than half of what the utilities have been these past months. 10 days is my limit. If it helps, we can pick a Sunday so it's easier to coordinate a ride. Vincent worked the math in his head. Today is the 15th. 10 days is the 25th. That's a Sunday. Jordan stared at the legal pad like it might blink first. I don't have 600. You can get help, I said, not unkindly. You have support. Her jaw tightened. Fine. 10 days, 600. But I'm not paying rent on top of that. No one asked you to, I said. Vincent wrote it up in clean, simple sentences. Jordan will vacate the premises by 5 p.m. on the 25th, deliver all keys to Zoe, remove all personal property, leave the premises in broom-clean condition, and pay $600 by cashier's check or money order to Zoe on or before that date. Zoe will dismiss the unlawful detainer with prejudice upon timely move-out and payment. If Jordan fails to comply, judgment for possession and $600 will enter without further hearing. No admission of liability by either party. He slid the form across. Please read this. If it reflects what you agreed to, sign and date. I'll bring it to the judge for entry. I read every line, signed and dated. Jordan scraped her name across the bottom like the pen fought her. Vincent made copies with a little desktop machine that warmed up and rattled, handed one to each of us. The original goes to the court file, he said. You'll be called in shortly for the judge to confirm. Jordan gathered her purse, eyes sharp. As we stepped back into the hallway, she leaned toward me. You'll regret this, she hissed. I tucked my copy into my binder. See you on the 25th, I said, and sat down to wait for our names to be called. The 10 days crawled. Trash bags multiplied by the door. Jordan borrowed boxes from the liquor store, brown cartons with cut-out handles and fragile, stamped-over wine logos, and filled them with her closet and half the bathroom. The same two friends came and went, the ones who cheered in the video. They carried a lamp down the hall like it weighed as much as the decision she didn't make on day 30. The dog paced between us, nails ticking, getting more car rides than usual. Mum made appearances, arms crossed tight over her purse. She didn't look at me much. Once, when Jordan wasn't in the room, she said, "This is breaking my heart." And I said, "You can be mad at me and still let her face the consequences." She opened her mouth and shut it again. The next day, a new roll of tape appeared on the counter and the good scissors went missing. I let it be. Jordan cleaned in spurts and then let piles happen again. She sorted spices into a neat row, paprika, cumin, chili powder, like she was staging a photo. Then later the row thinned and the cumin jar never came back. She folded my spare towels into thirds in the hall closet, and then, when I went to grab one after a shower, a matching set was gone. I stayed out of the way. I went to work, came home, put pasta on, washed my own dish, and checked the calendar. I kept the binder closed on the sideboard and bought a new deadbolt and a patch kit from the hardware store. The guy in aisle 12 told me which paint matched rental beige best, and I nodded like I already knew. On Sunday the 25th, I woke up before my alarms. It was quiet. The agreement said keys by 5. At 2, one of Jordan's friends backed up a hatchback and the three of them made a human chain from the bedroom to the curb. I stayed in the kitchen with a glass of water and out of their way. Around 3, I grabbed my phone and took pictures of the room as it emptied. The nail holes dotting the wall where she'd hung a tapestry, a scuffed stripe where a nightstand had rubbed, the dust mice under the bed frame. The bathroom counter was wiped, but there were bobby pins in the sink. Broom clean, I reminded myself. Not spotless, reasonable. At 4:47, she appeared in the doorway with her last bag. She didn't look at me. The dog was already in the car. He let out a bark through the open window like he was also announcing the end of something. "Keys," she said, and placed them in my open palm, cool and familiar. On top of the keys, she put a white envelope. There. I slid a finger under the flap. Inside was a money order for $600 made out to me, the kind you buy at a grocery store service desk. In the corner where it said purchaser, the handwriting looked like Mom's careful loops. I didn't say anything about it. It wasn't my business how the money found its way to me. "Congratulations on your empty life," Jordan said, eyes on a spot over my shoulder. "You held up your end," I said. "Thank you." She laughed once, dry, like a cough. "Sure." She looked around the room a final time, as if she were going to take something else by staring at it hard enough, then shifted the bag higher on her shoulder. "Don't call me if you miss me." "I won't," I said, because lying didn't help either of us. She winced like I'd hit her, and then she was gone, down the hall and through the door, the soft whoomp of the hatchback closing following her. I stood for a minute with the envelope and the keys in the quiet. Then I moved. I locked the door, took the money order to the binder, and slid a copy into the bills tab, and put the original in my tote for the bank on Monday. I texted Hannah, "Keys and payment in hand, 10 days. She sent back a string of clapping hands and "Proud of you." I took the new deadbolt out of its plastic and changed the lock with a screwdriver and the kind of focus I use at work when a form has 3 boxes that all look the same. The old cylinder came out easy. The new one slid in like it wanted to be there. I tested the new key twice and tossed the old one in the trash. In the empty room, I patched the nail holes with white spackle out of a little tub, pressed, smoothed, sanded when it dried. I taped the baseboards and rolled on paint until the scuffed stripe disappeared. The smell of it filled the hall, clean and chemical, and I opened a window to let fresh air in. I vacuumed the corners and felt the sand and grit give under the wheels. In the living room, I folded a load of laundry without anyone else's socks mixed in. The silence wasn't heavy. It was a balm. It poured down around me until my shoulders dropped an inch. On Tuesday, I went to the bank on my lunch break and deposited the money order at the window because Mobile Deposit doesn't like them. I stopped by the courthouse on my way back to drop off a 1-page dismissal form with the case number on top. The clerk stamped it, slid my copy back, and said, "Okay, you're all set," in the flat voice of a person for whom this is all routine. That evening, I took 3 pictures of the room with the afternoon light on the freshly painted wall and posted a simple listing: 1 bedroom in owner-occupied duplex, month to month, $950, plus half utilities, quiet house, no partying, references required. The next day, my inbox chirped. The week after, a soft-spoken woman named Elise Richards knocked on my door, asked about the bus line and the quiet hours, and walked the room with her hands in her pockets. After we talked, she took a cashier's check out of her tote and set it on my dining table. "For the deposit," she said. I looked at the neat print of my name on the payee line and felt the house settle around us like it recognised a different kind of choice. Elise moved in on the 1st, right on time, a Sunday with the kind of light that makes everything look cleaner. She arrived in a compact car with 2 plastic totes, a garment bag, and a box of books labelled classroom. She took off her shoes at the door without me saying anything and asked where I wanted her to park so I didn't get boxed in for work. The quiet of it felt like a gift. We sat at the dining table and went through the month to month like normal adults. $950 rent, due on the 1st, half the utilities within 5 days of the bill, $500 deposit, no subletting, no overnight guests more than 3 nights in a row without a heads up, quiet after 10. She pulled her reading glasses down and traced each line with the tip of a pen. "Are you okay with online pay?" she asked. "I can set it to go through the morning of." "Zelle works," I said. "Or a cheque?" "Zelle's perfect," she said. She slid a photocopy of her ID across, along with 2 references, her previous landlord and her vice principal. I called both while she carried in an armful of hangers. The landlord said she was early with rent more than once. The vice principal said, "She's in by 7 and asleep by 10. I exhaled. We signed, traded spare keys, and walked through the house. "This shelf can be yours," I said, pointing to a pantry section I'd cleared. She put a small label on the edge with a piece of blue painter's tape and wrote Elise in neat teacher handwriting. In the fridge, she claimed a shelf and said out loud, "This is me," like she was narrating a routine. It made something in my shoulders unclench. Her first night, she made tea, washed the mug, and put it on the drying mat. "I'm out early," she said, rinsing the spoon. "Bus is at 6:20. "There's a stop a block over," I said. "The 14 connects to the 9. "Exactly," she said, like she'd already mapped it. "Mom called that Tuesday. She didn't start with hello." "Can you keep helping your sister?" she said. "Just for a bit. She's trying that place out on Maple, but the landlord is strict. No guests, no loud music, can you believe? And she feels suffocated." I wiped down the counter and watched the paper towel come away clean. "I am helping," I said, "by not enabling." Silence stretched on the line. I waited her out the way I do at work, when a parent needs a second to shift frames. Finally, she said, softer, "She says you don't care." "I care," I said. "I just care about both of us." Mum exhaled a tired sound. "She shouldn't have posted that video," she said, half to herself. "I told her that." I didn't spike the ball. "I hope she likes Maple," I said. It's close to the grocery store. After we hung up, I texted Hannah. Mom asked me to keep helping. I told her I am. Hannah sent a thumbs up and Coffee Friday, my treat. We met at the corner place on my lunch break. She slid a latte across. You did the grown-up thing, she said, clinking her cup to mine. I didn't argue with her this time. The milk foam left a moustache on her lip, and we both laughed when she noticed. Word filtered in like weather reports do. A mutual friend mentioned Jordan found a room out past the highway, cheaper and with parking. She keeps getting into it with the landlord about having people over, the friend said. He's got rules. I nodded and stirred my coffee, a small private smile tucked into my sleeve. Rules exist whether you like them or not. Life in my duplex clicked into a new rhythm. Elise's shoes lined up by the door. A pair of quiet teacher flats, my clinic clogs, nobody else's heels. She labelled her leftovers with dates and actually ate them. On the 31st, I texted her a screenshot of the electric bill total. On the 2nd, she sent her half with a thanks and a little plug emoji, a small thing, but it landed like proof. We shared the couch sometimes, her with a stack of essays and a purple pen, me with my laptop and claims to finish. She asked, "Is this volume okay?" And it always was. She offered me a cookie from a school bake sale and I took one and actually tasted it. She was out at dawn grading or catching the bus, and the TV wasn't a constant third roommate anymore. The dog noises were gone. I missed him in the mornings, and then didn't. On the 10th, I pulled the binder out and slid the dismissal stamp into the front pocket, then tucked the whole thing on the top shelf of the hall closet. Not gone, just not at arm's reach. The first of the next month arrived with a ping on my phone at 7:01 a.m, rent received. No conversation, no sigh, no next month. I took a picture of the little notification because it felt like a landmark no one else would understand. I made coffee, good coffee, because I'd bought my preferred brand again, and stood at the kitchen window while it bloomed. Mum texted a photo that afternoon. Jordan and the dog on a sagging porch, both squinting. She's settling. The caption read. I typed, "Good," and put my phone face down. Hannah sent a second text later. "Proud of you again." I sent a single coffee cup back. That night, Elise came home with a stack of library books. "I'm trying to read for myself again," she said. "Not just for school." "I'm trying to cook more than pasta," I said. We ended up making an omelette and eating it standing up, each taking turns at the stove like a dance that had been practiced 100 times somewhere else. When I locked up before bed, the new deadbolt turned smooth and sure. The house felt like mine again, not because I won a fight, but because I set a rule and kept it. I slept without earplugs for the first time in months and didn't wake up to a TV I didn't turn on. In the morning, I exhaled, long and quiet, and didn't realise until then how long I'd been holding my breath.
The text message arrived on a Tuesday morning, a cheerful little ping that shattered the quiet of my apartment. It was from my mother. "Hi, sweetie. Big news. Dad and I decided to take Natalie and her family to Hawaii for 2 weeks. A real family getaway before the kids start school. We leave Thursday. So exciting." I stared at the screen, my coffee growing cold in my hands. My name is Natasha Freeman, and I'm 31 years old. I am technically part of the family, but I've learned over the years that my inclusion is conditional, usually dependent on whether I'm needed for something. I typed back a single neutral word. "Wow." Her reply was instantaneous, the 3 little dots dancing with practiced efficiency. "I know, it was so last minute. Anyway, we were hoping you could watch the house and Winston. It would be such a huge help. We'd feel so much better knowing you were there." There it was. The other shoe. I wasn't invited to the real family getaway, but I was being offered the consolation prize of being the unpaid house and dog sitter. Winston, their spoiled golden retriever, was sweet enough, but the request felt like a slap in the face, delivered with a smiley face emoji. My mother, Delilah, is 56 and has spent her entire adult life curating the perfect family image. My father, Julius, a 58-year-old retired athlete turned real estate consultant, sees the world in terms of assets and liabilities. My older sister, Natalie, who is 34, is his greatest asset. She married her college sweetheart, Kyson, now 35, produced 2 photogenic children, and lives in a sprawling suburban home. She is the sun around which our family solar system orbits. I, on the other hand, am a distant, low-mass planet, useful for maintaining gravitational balance, but otherwise unremarkable. I took a deep breath and typed the same response I'd been giving them my whole life. Of course, no problem. 2 days later, they were gone. The family group chat, pointedly named Freeman Fam Fun, blew up my phone. The first photo was of them at the airport lounge, clinking champagne glasses. My father raised his glass in a toast, his smile wide and artificial. Natalie looked radiant. Her kids perfectly behaved. Kyson had already posted it to Instagram with the hashtag Ohana. I muted the chat. For the first few days, I tried to ignore it. I worked my remote tech support job from their stiff, formal living room, took Winston for long walks, and watered my mother's prize-winning hydrangeas. But the photos kept coming, a relentless assault of curated joy. There was Natalie and my mom getting pedicures, their feet propped up against a turquoise ocean backdrop. There was my dad teaching my nephew how to surf. There was the whole group, minus me, posing with lays at a luau, their faces tanned and glowing. Each picture was a fresh little paper cut on a wound that had never really healed. They didn't even seem to notice my absence. I was just the reliable off-screen crew member who made the show possible. On the 5th day, I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to get out of the main living area, away from the pristine white couches and the framed 8 L10s of Natalie's wedding. I decided to sleep in my old childhood bedroom instead of the guest room. I hadn't actually stayed in it for years, but I figured it would be a quiet escape. I pushed open the door and stopped dead. The room was unrecognizable. It was no longer a bedroom. It was a high-end storage unit. Cardboard boxes were stacked 5 feet high against one wall, labeled in my mother's neat cursive, Julius, old trophies, holiday linens, do not crush, Natalie's college textbooks. An old, broken treadmill was wedged into a corner, draped in my father's dusty golf bags. My old desk was buried under a mountain of photo albums and what looked like my mother's entire collection of seasonal decorative pillows. The only thing that remained of my childhood was the faded floral wallpaper peeking out from behind the clutter. They hadn't just forgotten to invite me. They had physically erased me. My space, the one place in that house that had ever been mine, was now just a convenient place to store their excess baggage. I stood in the doorway, the scent of dust and neglect filling my lungs. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Another picture from the group chat. The whole family smiling on a catamaran at sunset. The caption from my mom read, "Thinking of you, sweetie. Hope Winston is being good. XOXO. Something inside me, a tightly wound spring I'd been compressing for 3 decades, finally snapped. I looked at the mountain of boxes, at the physical manifestation of my role in this family, the keeper of their forgotten things. I whispered it to the empty, cluttered room, the words tasting like freedom and fury. That's it. The next morning, I started. Fueled by a night of simmering rage and 2 strong cups of black coffee, I pulled the first box off a stack. It was heavy, the cardboard soft with age. Holiday linens, do not crush, my mother's handwriting declared. I sliced the tape with a kitchen knife and dumped the contents onto the floor. Musty-smelling tablecloths, embroidered with Santas and reindeer, tumbled out. Underneath them, a collection of chipped ceramic angels. This wasn't just storage. It was a tomb for forgotten sentiment. I worked systematically, a one-woman demolition crew. I dragged box after box into the hallway, sorting them into 3 piles: trash, donate, and theirs. The physical labor was cathartic. With every box I moved, I felt like I was clearing out a space in my own head. In a box labeled School Memories, I found what I expected. Natalie's report cards were on top, all straight A's, laminated and tied with a ribbon. Mine were underneath, a messy stack of B's and C's with a few frustrated teacher comments circled in red pen by my father. I remembered him telling me, "Natalie sets the bar, Natasha. Why can't you just try to reach it?" Seeing the evidence of that lifelong comparison, so neatly filed away, made my stomach clench. I kept digging. I found a small, elegant box tucked inside a larger one, filled with old tax documents. Inside was a thick, cream-colored envelope. My name was written on the front in beautiful calligraphy. It was an invitation to my cousin Sarah's wedding, a wedding that had taken place 8 years ago. A wedding I was explicitly told was immediate family only because they were on a tight budget. I remember crying to my mom on the phone, hurt that I couldn't be there to see Sarah get married. "It's not personal, sweetie," she'd cooed. "They just couldn't fit anyone else." But here was the invitation. It had been sent to my parents' house, as most of my mail was back when I was in college. They just never gave it to me. They had decided, on my behalf, that I wasn't going. I dropped the invitation into the theirs pile. The paper felt heavy with the weight of the lie. The worst discovery came in the afternoon. I was wrestling with a heavy wooden chest wedged behind the broken treadmill. It was my father's old athletic footlocker. I pried it open, a cloud of dust erupting into the air. Inside, nestled among his yellow jerseys and tarnished medals, was my grandmother's silver locket. My breath caught in my throat. The locket had gone missing when I was 16. It was the last thing my grandmother gave me before she passed away, and I cherished it. My mother had been convinced I'd lost it through carelessness. I'd been grounded for a month. My father had given me a lecture on responsibility and the value of things that I would never be able to replace. "You're just like this, Natasha," he'd said, his voice dripping with disappointment, "careless with things that matter." And here it was. It must have fallen into his locker at some point, and he'd never noticed or bothered to look. They let me believe for 15 years that I was the one who had failed, that I was the irresponsible one. I clutched the cool metal in my hand, the anger so sharp and hot it felt like it might burn me from the inside out. By evening, the room was almost empty. The piles in the hallway were enormous. All that was left was a single, sealed banker's box at the very back of the closet, shoved so far back it was almost hidden. It was one of my father's. I dragged it out into the light. Unlike the others, it had no label. It was just sealed with thick packing tape. Driven by a new, reckless curiosity, I sliced it open. It was filled with old financial records, bank statements from decades ago, and property assessments. It was boring, mostly. But at the very bottom, I found a large manila envelope, thick and stiff. Scrawled across the front in my father's aggressive, all-caps handwriting were 4 words, "Do not open. Property of Julius." My old self, the one who lived in fear of his disapproval, would have sealed the box and put it back. But that version of me was buried under a mountain of lies and forgotten heirlooms in the hallway. My hands didn't even shake as I tore open the flap. Inside was a single folded document. A quitclaim deed. I unfolded it under the bare bulb of the closet light. It was for a property I'd never heard of, a small house on a lake about 3 hours north. But it wasn't the property that made my blood run cold. It was the name listed as the sole owner. It was my father's, Julius Freeman. and it was dated just 6 months after my grandmother had died. The deed felt like a block of ice in my hands. I sat on the floor of my now empty childhood room, the document spread across my lap, and I finally understood. This wasn't about carelessness or forgetfulness. This was a pattern, a systemic, deliberate erasure of me from the family narrative, from its history and its assets. My room was just the storage closet for their lives. I was the storage closet for their secrets. The next morning, I didn't hesitate. I opened my laptop, bypassed my work email, and typed storage units near me into the search bar. The first result was for a place called O'Connor Secure Storage, less than 10 minutes away. I called, and a brisk, no-nonsense female voice answered on the second ring. An hour later, I was standing in a small, tidy office that smelled of cardboard and industrial cleaner. The woman behind the counter had sharp blue eyes and a cascade of silver hair pulled back in a clip. A small nameplate on her desk read Reagan O'Connor, proprietor. She looked to be in her 60s, with an expression that suggested she'd seen every possible reason a person might need to lock their life away in a metal box. "What can I do for you, hun?" she asked, looking me over. "I need a unit," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "A large one, climate-controlled." She raised an eyebrow. "Climate-controlled is for the important stuff. Antiques, art, wine, or evidence." She gave me a wry smile. I felt a ghost of a smile touch my own lips. "Let's just call it family heirlooms." "Right," she said, tapping at her keyboard. "Heirlooms. I've got a 10 by 20 available, big enough to fit the contents of a 2-bedroom apartment, or one family's worth of bad decisions." She slid a form and a pen across the counter. "I'll need a credit card and a copy of your ID." As I filled out the paperwork, I made a decision. I listed the primary account holders as Julius and Delilah Freeman. I put their home address, then I put my credit card down for the initial payment, setting it to auto-renew monthly. They could sort it out later. Reagan glanced at the names, then back at my driver's license. She didn't say a word, just nodded slowly, a flicker of understanding in her eyes. "You'll be all set," she said, handing me a heavy-duty padlock and 2 keys. "Unit 314. Let me know if you need a hand truck." Back at the house, I transformed. The years I'd spent being the family's unofficial tech support, bookkeeper, and general problem solver had given me a particular set of skills. I opened my laptop and created a new spreadsheet. I went through the piles in the hallway, meticulously cataloging every single item. Box 1, holiday linens, damaged. Box 2, J. Freeman, high school trophies, tarnished. Box 3, N. Phillips, college sociology textbooks, obsolete. I took a photo of each box and its contents, linking the image file in the spreadsheet. I was creating a chain of evidence. This wasn't going to be a messy, emotional outburst. It was going to be a flawlessly executed project. I found a local moving company with good reviews and booked them for the next day. 2 men, a truck, 4 hours. It would be more than enough. That evening, my phone rang. It was my best friend, Sabrina. I'd known her since kindergarten, and she was the only person who knew the unedited version of my family life. "Hey," I answered, leaning against the doorframe of the empty room. "Okay, you need to sit down," she said, her voice tight with a mixture of outrage and glee. "Are you on Instagram right now?" "No, I'm trying to maintain my will to live," I said dryly. "Well, get on it. Kyson just posted a new reel." I sighed and pulled up the app. There it was, at the top of my feed. A professionally edited video montage set to some upbeat generic pop song. Shots of them laughing on the beach, my nephew splashing in the waves, Natalie and my mom clinking cocktail glasses. It ended with a shot of the whole family at a fancy dinner, raising their glasses to the camera. My father was beaming. The caption, written by Kyson, was the final nail in the coffin. To the best family anyone could ask for. So blessed to be making these core memories in paradise. Family over everything. Ohana, blessed Hawaii. I stared at the screen, at their smiling, perfect faces. The best family anyone could ask for. A family that didn't include me. A family that used my room as a dumpster and hid my inheritance. A family that was thinking of me, but only when they needed a dog sitter. Any flicker of doubt I might have had was extinguished. Any guilt about what I was about to do vanished, replaced by a cold, clear certainty. Tasha? You still there? Sabrina asked softly. I'm here, I said, my voice low and steady, and I'm about to send them an invoice for services rendered. The movers arrived at 9 o'clock sharp the next morning. Two young, efficient guys named Marco and Dave took one look at the mountain of boxes in the hallway and didn't even blink. Where's it all going? Marco asked, clipboard in hand. I gave him the address for O'Connor Secure Storage and the unit number. Unit 314. Everything in the hall, the treadmill, the golf bags, and all the boxes from that bedroom. I pointed to my old room, now pristine and empty for the first time in over a decade. They worked quickly and professionally, a whirlwind of packing tape and heavy lifting. I stood back and directed traffic, my spreadsheet open on my laptop. As they loaded the last box onto the truck, I felt a profound sense of lightness. It wasn't just junk leaving the house. It was the physical weight of my family's expectations and disregard. After they left, the silence in the house was different. It wasn't the oppressive, museum-like quiet my mother cultivated. It was clean. It was open. It was mine. And I decided to make it so. My mission for the next few days was simple. Erase their presence and reclaim the space. This wasn't about destruction. It was about correction. I started in the living room. The remote controls on the coffee table were always arranged in a perfect descending line by size. I fanned them out like a deck of cards. My mother's collection of art books, all with pristine, uncracked spines, were stacked just so. I pulled one out and left it open to a random page. In the kitchen, I went through the refrigerator, tossing out expired condiments and half-empty jars of things no one had touched in months. I reorganized the pantry, putting my preferred brand of coffee front and center and pushing my father's decaf to the back. I even deleted their profiles from the smart TV's Netflix account. The algorithm wouldn't be suggesting any more of my father's boring historical dramas or my mother's British baking shows. From now on, it was my queue of true crime documentaries. The most satisfying part was the thermostat. My father kept the house at a frigid 68 degrees, year-round. I marched over to the control panel and cranked it up to a blissful 74. I walked through the house in a t-shirt, no longer needing a sweater, and felt a ridiculous surge of triumph. I deep cleaned the guest bathroom until the chrome fixtures gleamed, stocking it with my own soap and fresh towels. Their master bathroom, however, I left completely untouched. I didn't go in, didn't clean it, didn't even peek inside. It was their space. The rest of the house, for the next 9 days, was mine. I was reclaiming more than just physical territory. I was reclaiming my peace. I worked from the sunny spot on the living room couch instead of the dark home office. I played my own music through the house speakers, filling the sterile silence with indie rock instead of my mother's classical station. I let Winston sleep on the forbidden antique rug, and he seemed as happy about the new house rules as I was. On the third day of my domestic revolution, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but some instinct made me answer. I hit the speakerphone button and set it on the counter as I made a sandwich. Hello? There was a pause, then the crackle of an older woman's voice, hesitant and thin. Is this Natasha Freeman? It is. Who's this? My name is Carol. Carol Albright. You don't know me, the voice said, gaining a little strength. I was a friend of your grandmother's, Eleanor, a very dear friend. I stopped slicing my tomato. Okay. I know this is strange, she continued, but I saw something online, a picture of your family in Hawaii. It got me thinking about things, about promises. She took a shaky breath. Your grandfather, before he passed, he was very clear about the lake house. He adored you. You were always his favorite. He said you had his practical sense. He wanted you to have it. My hand froze, the knife hovering over the cutting board. I was there when he told your parents, Carol said, her voice filled with an old simmering indignation. He made them promise. He said, it's for the youngest granddaughter, for Natasha. I heard him say it with my own ears. I thought you should know. You're the one who should have inherited the lake house. The line went dead. I stood in the silent kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator suddenly deafening. The secret deed in my bag wasn't just a financial betrayal. It was a stolen legacy. My grandfather had chosen me, and my parents had buried his choice, just like they'd buried everything else they found inconvenient, in a dusty box in the back of a closet. Carol Albright's words echoed in my head long after the call ended. You're the one who should have inherited the lake house. It wasn't just a suspicion anymore. It was a fact, delivered by a voice from the past. The rage I'd felt before was now sharpened by a profound sense of grief, not just for the house, but for the relationship with my grandfather they had retroactively tainted. I pulled the deed from my bag and spread it out on the kitchen table. The legal jargon was dense, but the names and dates were clear. The property was transferred to Julius Freeman 6 months after my grandmother's death, but my grandfather had passed away 2 years before her. He had likely left it to her, with the verbal and possibly written instruction that it was to pass to me upon her death. My parents had simply intercepted it. I needed help. I called Sabrina. You are not going to believe this, I said, the moment she picked up. I recounted the entire phone call with Carol, my voice tight with a fresh wave of fury. Oh my God, Tasha, she breathed. This is so much bigger than a vacation. This is grand larceny level betrayal. I know. But a phone call from a stranger isn't proof, I said, pacing the kitchen. I need something concrete. Okay, let's think, Sabrina said, her practical side kicking in. Your grandfather's will. It would have gone through probate. It should be a public record. We can look it up online through the county records office where he lived. For the next hour, Sabrina, a paralegal who knew her way around bureaucratic websites, guided me through the digital archives of a county I hadn't thought about in years. We found it. My grandfather's last will and testament, scanned and digitized. My heart pounded as I scrolled through the PDF. Most of his assets were left to my grandmother, as expected. But then, there it was, in black and white. Article 4. I give and bequeath my property located at 114 Willow Creek Lane, including the house and all its contents, to my youngest granddaughter, Natasha Freeman, it being my express wish that she have a place of her own to find peace and quiet. It was all there, unambiguous, legal. My parents hadn't just ignored a wish. They had defied a legally binding document. They had committed fraud. They must have pressured your grandmother to sign it over to them before she passed, Sabrina said, her voice grim, or convinced her it was for the family's good to keep it under your dad's name for tax reasons or something, and then just never told you. The pieces clicked into place. The quitclaim deed my father had signed was likely him transferring the property from my grandmother's estate into his own name, effectively stealing it from me. The rage I felt was cold and clean. It wasn't a hot flash of anger anymore. It was a block of solid ice in my chest. This wasn't just about being overlooked. This was theft, plain and simple. I looked at the will, then at the deed. I had the motive, the means, and now the evidence. But I needed one more thing. I needed to see how they would react when confronted with their own lie. I opened a new email. I created a temporary, anonymous-looking address. I thought for a moment, channeling my father's blunt, slightly arrogant tone. I addressed the email to the family lawyer, a man named Mr. Davison, whose firm had handled my grandparents' estate, to MalloyDavison@davisonlaw.com, from jfreeman.consulting@tempmail.com. Subject, title clarification, 114 Willow Creek Lane. Mr. Davison, hope you're well. I'm reviewing some old property files for our records and need a clarification on the title for the Willow Creek Lane property. Can you please forward me a copy of the original title transfer from my late father-in-law's estate for our files? We are considering transferring it into a family trust and want to ensure the chain of title is clean. Thank you. Julius Freeman. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. It was a long shot, but if Mr. Davison responded without questioning the email address, I would have a fresh paper trail. A paper trail that showed my father was actively managing a property that was never legally his. A strange calm settled over me. The family vacation was ending in a few days. The house was clean, their junk was in storage, and the seeds of my own quiet revolution were sown. They were coming home to a house that looked the same on the surface, but where the very foundation had shifted beneath their feet. They thought they were returning from paradise. They had no idea they were walking into a reckoning. They arrived home on a Sunday afternoon, exactly 2 weeks after they left. I heard the crunch of their car tires on the gravel driveway and took a deep, steadying breath. Winston, bless his simple, loyal heart, started barking excitedly at the door. I had spent the morning returning the house to its original state of museum-like perfection, save for one detail. The thermostat remained at a comfortable 74 degrees. I opened the door just as my father was fitting his key in the lock. They stood on the porch, a tableau of sun-kissed privilege. My mother, Delilah, looked impeccable even after a long flight. My father, Julius, radiated a smug, well-rested energy. Natalie herded her 2 tired, cranky children past me, while her husband, Kyson, wrestled with a mountain of luggage. Natasha, sweetie, thank you so much for everything, my mother said, air-kissing the space beside my cheek. Did Winston behave himself? He was perfect, I said, my voice cool and even. The house is fine. Everything is fine. They bustled inside, shedding bags and carry-ons in the foyer. No one seemed to notice anything amiss. They were too absorbed in their post-vacation haze, chattering about the flight and the traffic from the airport. It's a bit warm in here, isn't it? My father commented, striding past me to the thermostat. He frowned at the number and immediately punched it back down to 68. I didn't say a word. For the first hour, they ignored me, busy unpacking and settling back in. I sat on the living room couch, scrolling through my phone, a silent observer in my own family's home. They moved around me as if I were a piece of furniture. Finally, my father emerged from his study, stretching. All right, I'm going to get my workout in, he announced to no one in particular. Natasha, be a doll and help me grab the old walking treadmill from your room. My back is killing me from that flight. This was it. The moment of ignition. I didn't get up. I simply reached into my pocket and pulled out a single, shiny key. Taped to it was a small folded piece of paper. I held it out to him. What's this? he asked, a hint of impatience in his voice. That's for the treadmill, I said calmly. He took it from me, his brow furrowed in confusion. He unfolded the paper. It was an invoice, neatly printed, itemized, and professional. Invoice to Julius and Delilah Freeman. Services rendered, off-site storage and removal of non-essential items from 14 Archer Place. Unit, that for 314, O'Connor, secure storage. First month's rent, paid, 220th hours, moving services, paid, 450, total, due, reimbursement appreciated. He stared at it, his mouth slightly agape. My mother, sensing a shift in the atmosphere, drifted over to look over his shoulder. Her perfectly curated smile faltered. Storage unit? What is this, some kind of joke? My father finally managed, trying for a laugh, but it came out strained. No joke, I said, meeting his gaze. You needed more storage space, so I arranged it for you. The implication hung in the air, thick and heavy. He looked from the invoice to my face, then back again. A slow, dawning horror crept into his eyes. He turned and strode down the hall toward my old bedroom. My mother and Natalie followed, a confused and anxious procession. Kyson just stood awkwardly in the foyer with the suitcase. I heard the doorknob turn, followed by a sharp, stunned silence. I could picture the scene perfectly. The empty room, the clean carpets, the bare walls. It was a blank slate, scrubbed clean of their history and my resentment. My father was the first to speak, his voice a low growl. What did you do? I cleaned out my room, I called back from the couch, my voice carrying easily down the hall. Then came Natalie's shriek. It was high-pitched and laced with pure panic. She stormed back into the living room, her face flushed with anger, her eyes wild. Where is it? She demanded, her voice trembling. Where's Mom's wedding dress? I looked up at Natalie, my expression unreadable. It's in a climate-controlled secure storage unit, I said, as if discussing the weather, along with Dad's trophies, your college textbooks, and about 30 boxes of other things that were stored in my bedroom. My father and mother appeared in the hallway behind her, their faces masks of disbelief and fury. You had no right, my father boomed, his voice echoing in the suddenly silent house. He took a step toward me, his posture aggressive. That is our property. You can't just move our things. I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I simply held my ground. Actually, I can. You asked me to house sit. I found a significant clutter issue that could be considered a fire hazard, and I resolved it. I have photos, a complete inventory, and receipts for all the services I procured on your behalf. My mother, Delilah, finally found her voice, though it was thin and shaky. My wedding dress, Natasha, my mother's china. How could you? How could I repeated, a humorless laugh escaping my lips. You mean, how could I be so organized and efficient? I learned from the best. You taught me to handle the family's unpleasant tasks quietly and without complaint. I just decided to apply that skill set to a problem of my own. I stood up and walked over to the dining room table. I'd left a handsome leather portfolio there before they arrived. I opened it. Years of being the family's built-in, on-call, unpaid assistant comes with a price, I said, my voice dangerously calm. Years of being the convenient afterthought, the one who was reliable enough to watch the dog, but not important enough to invite on the real family getaway. That's going to cost you finally. I slid a document across the polished wood surface. This is a copy of the rental agreement for the storage unit. It's in your names, Julius and Delilah Freeman. I paid the first month as a courtesy. The bill will be sent here to this address from now on. It's set to auto-renew, so you don't have to worry about losing anything. All your sentimental things are safe. My father stared at the paper, his face turning a dark mottled red. This is insane. You're insane. Am I? I pulled another document from the portfolio. It was a printout of the email I had sent to Mr. Davison, posing as my father. Attached to it was his polite, professional reply from 2 days ago, with a PDF of the original title transfer for the lake house attached. I find it interesting, I said, pushing the papers toward them, that you were so concerned with the clean chain of title for a property you were never meant to own. The color drained from my mother's face. My father looked like I had physically struck him. And just in case there's any confusion about that, I continued, my voice dropping, here's a copy of Granddad's will. I placed the final document on top of the pile. I had highlighted Article 4. I give and bequeath my property to my youngest granddaughter, Natasha Freeman. The room was utterly silent except for the frantic hum of the air conditioner kicking on. Natalie looked from the papers to her parents, her golden child certainty completely shattered. What is this? Mom? Dad? What is she talking about? My parents said nothing. They couldn't. The evidence was right there, in black and white, on their perfectly polished dining table. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I glanced at the screen. It was Sabrina. I excused myself with a polite, I have to take this, and stepped into the kitchen, leaving them to stare at the wreckage of their own secrets. You will not believe this, Sabrina said, her voice electric. I was talking to my boss about your situation, hypothetically, of course, and she mentioned something. So I called Reagan at the storage place. She's a retired legal secretary, by the way. She said to tell you that since you were a minor when your grandfather died and your legal guardians, your parents, failed to inform you of your inheritance and instead converted it for their own use, it's not just fraud. It's a breach of fiduciary duty. You can not only sue for the property, but for damages. The statute of limitations might not even apply because the fraud was actively concealed from you. Tasha, you can get it all back, and you can make them pay for it. I looked through the doorway at my family, frozen around the table like a still life painting titled Consequences. My father's narcissism, my mother's passive control, my sister's willful ignorance. It was all laid bare. They hadn't just stored their junk in my room. They had stored their lies there too. And I had just moved it all out into the light. I walked back into the dining room, my phone still in my hand. The three of them were exactly where I had left them, staring at the portfolio of documents as if it were a bomb. My father looked up, his face a thunderous mask of rage, but the fight had gone out of his eyes. He was a man who understood leverage, and he knew he had just lost all of his. Get out of my house, he said, his voice low and guttural. Gladly, I replied. I picked up my car keys from the counter, gave Winston one last scratch behind the ears, and walked out the front door without a backward glance. I didn't have a plan for where I was going, but for the first time in my life, I felt like I was heading in the right direction. The next few weeks were quiet. I stayed with Sabrina, sleeping on her pull-out couch and working from her kitchen table. My parents didn't call. They didn't text. The silence from them was absolute, a stark contrast to the constant low-level demands that had defined our relationship for 31 years. Natalie tried once. A string of guilt-laced texts appeared on my phone a few days after I left. How could you do this to Mom and Dad? Followed by, you've torn this family apart over some old junk. And finally, the classic, I don't even know who you are anymore. I read them, felt a familiar pang of conditioned guilt, and then deleted the thread without replying. I knew who I was. I was the one who was finally sending the bill. A week later, I got an email from Mr. Davison. It was formal, brief, and addressed directly to me. He wrote that he had been contacted by Julius and Delilah Freeman, who, upon reviewing family estate documents, wished to relinquish any and all claims to the property at 114 Willow Creek Lane. They were prepared to sign whatever was necessary to transfer the title to my name, free and clear, immediately. There was no apology, no explanation. It was a surrender, drafted by a lawyer to avoid admitting fault. They weren't giving the house back out of remorse. They were giving it back to avoid a lawsuit for fraud. Sabrina and I drove up to the lake house the following weekend. It was a small, simple cottage, nestled in a grove of pine trees at the end of a gravel road. It was dusty and smelled of old wood and forgotten summers, but the afternoon sun streamed through the windows, illuminating a space that felt peaceful and, more importantly, mine. We started in one of the spare bedrooms, armed with cleaning supplies and a box of trash bags. As we wiped down dusty shelves and aired out musty linens, Sabrina stopped and looked at me. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice gentle. "I mean, really." I thought about it for a moment, leaning against the old wooden dresser. I wasn't triumphant. I didn't feel the giddy rush of victory I had expected. Instead, I felt a quiet, settled sense of balance. The scales, which had been tipped against me for my entire life, had finally been righted. It wasn't a happy ending, because the story wasn't happy. It was just a correct one. "I think I am," I said, and I was surprised to find that it was true. I feel clear, like I finally cleaned out a room that desperately needed it. We worked for the rest of the afternoon, the silence broken only by the sound of our movements and the birds outside. I found an old photo album filled with pictures of my grandparents, their faces young and smiling. In one, my grandfather was holding me as a toddler, and he was looking at me with an expression of such pure, uncomplicated love that it made my chest ache. He had wanted me to have this place. He had wanted me to have a place of peace. My family is still a family, I suppose. They're probably already rebuilding their perfect portrait, cropping me out of the frame for good this time. They'll pay the monthly fee on their storage unit, a quiet, recurring reminder of the daughter they misplaced. They'll keep their secrets and their resentments and their carefully curated image. But their baggage is no longer my burden to carry. I didn't burn down the house. I just took back my room, one box at a time,